These virtual high fives don't work.
I was really trying to hit you in the head, Jonathan. It was not a high five.
You got a fly on your head, Jonathan. Bam. See what I did there?
Oh.
It's topical.
It's the most popular thing in the presidential election right now. The fly.
No one can argue with him.
What's the fly polling at? 52%?
Yeah, I think so.
I heard he got COVID though, so.
And on that note, are we ready to go?
Alyssa, are we live on YouTube?
Yes, sir. We're ready to go.
Oh, okay. Maybe I should have asked you that like 3 minutes ago. All right, everybody, thank you. Welcome this evening. It is October 15th. This is the second meeting of the month. We have anybody who has in the audience who is calling in. I see one person so far, but if anybody else is calling in or is listening to this, if they want to comment on a topic when it's time and appropriate for comments, please press *9. Anybody else, just raise your hand and make sure to unmute yourself. And with that, let's do roll call.
Willman?
Here.
Cope?
Here.
Godus?
Here.
Davis?
Yes, I am.
No one asked about me, Catherine, but I'm here.
Hershey?
Here. It's a long pause there before here.
All right, so it sounds like the only one we don't have with us at this time is Paula. Actually, you know, Paula, sorry. Like it should be a surprise. Paula told me she's not going to be here this evening, so it's just the 5 of us this evening. And next on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'll lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Next is any agenda changes or conflicts. The only agenda change we've had since the packet came out on Monday, I think it was sent as an update to us all, but we're going to be having, there's the first item of business, a presentation by Black Hills Energy. So if folks on council had not seen that or in the public had looked at the agenda earlier in the week, that is the one thing that has changed. It was changed yesterday and noticed. Any other changes from council or staff that we need to be aware of or that we need to consider? Okay, any conflicts of interest this evening? A lot of land use, all right. Next on the agenda is citizens appearing before council. This is everybody's time. If they want to speak on something not on the agenda, you have 3 minutes, talk about whatever you would like. Keep your comments focused and say your name and address and fire away. Okay, it looks like there is no public comment. I am sure we'll get somebody in about 3 minutes after we close it, like we do every time. All right, next is we'll bring it back for council comments. Shelley.
Yeah, I just had a quick question, and this, I guess, goes to Deborah. Just looking through the budget for next year, I can't see the type of detail, but we have been talking for a couple of years now about updating our IECC to kind of be in line with the other building codes that we have adopted in the city. And right now, I believe we're still on the 2009, which is quite a few years behind where our other building codes are. So just wondering what the status is of that. I know we brought on a new building official, so that kind of delayed it a little bit, but just wondering if we're ready to move that forward for 2021.
I would have to ask Jen to respond or get back to you if she is not.
Okay, you can get back to me. That's fine. Thanks.
Okay, anything else, Shelley? Nope, okay, Tony.
Just really quick, Mr. Mayor, I got a tour with Laura Speck yesterday of the area near her house and behind Walmart. And I did take some pictures that I was going to share with all of you, but they're a little depressing. Just what a mess. So I just encourage, I know Paul, I think, was out there, but I just encourage anyone who hasn't been maybe to go look back there, especially at all the garbage and stuff. It's very sad. And we're working. Oh, Debbie Wild came with me too. So we talked about some homeless issues too. So it was really interesting. Thank you to her. That's it.
Thanks, Tony. Deborah.
Okay, Jen was able to let me know that we're looking to go to the 21 year in 21. So next year is the plan.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Well, we know it was Rick and Paula's fault that we have 45-minute council comments. I guess that's the answer. I just have real quick, we did have a meeting today with the Airport Commission, and we had a work session on our water rates. I encourage, hopefully the paper will report on that, but it's not something that's going to be an easy conversation. It's not something we enjoy or relish at all. The water rate study. As to the Airport Commission, is a great conversation. That's kind of been a conversation we've been having for the last couple of years. But one thing that did come up is there is a CDOT study. There is we commissioned jointly with the airport board a study, Gruen study, about 1.5 years ago that got wrapped up about 6 months ago. It's kind of been just sitting there, and they come to very different conclusions. And I guess I would love to, not tonight by any means, but sometime after the first of the year, when we get a little bit more time under our belt and staff can breathe a little bit, I would love to hear staff's opinion and kind of do an analysis of those studies. We have a really sharp staff. Steve Boyd's a graduate of Wharton, and Deborah's and Yvette, and we have really sharp people. And I really just love to know kind of what the difference is, what different factors, and kind of an evaluation of those different studies, because they're very, very different. So if anybody else would like to kind of maybe hear staff's take on those two different studies, that'd be something I think I would be interested in hearing. I see hands, nods. So is that something that staff is okay with, Deborah?
I would say let me talk to them and see if they feel like that is something they can do.
Okay, and
we'll come back and let you know.
I wouldn't even want you guys to probably talk about it until after Christmas. So this is not a top 10 thing for me.
And I think, Jonathan, you're just talking about an objective, like, analysis of why the numbers are so different, like how they came up with their numbers in each study.
Yes.
Okay.
That's all. I'm not looking for this study was right and this study was wrong or anything like that. Just kind of a first blush take on why some of the methodology is so different.
I just want to make sure that someone would actually feel comfortable doing it, because yes, they are very bright, but no, none of them have a background in airport management. So just let me check.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Thank you, staff, for opening up the leaf drop. Citizens are very happy about that. There was rumors that we wouldn't be doing it this year, and I told everybody that those rumors were completely unfounded, when I had absolutely no idea whether they were or not. So I was happy that I was proven right. So thank you, staff. I know our public works crew is super busy, as is everybody, because we just haven't filled most of our part-time staff, and that public works department does rely, and the Parks and Rec, mostly the park side, relies a lot on that. So thank you. That's all I have. let's see. Any other comments, questions? Nope. Okay. Next item, number 9, consent agenda.
I move for the approval of the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I second.
It's been moved by Charlie, seconded by Steve. Can you signify by saying aye and a raise of hands to approve? Aye. Any opposed? Seeing no thumbs down or a nay, motion carries unanimously. All right, next item, Black Hills Energy Update. Who is starting this off? And do I need to promote anybody from a attendee to a panelist?
Jonathan, I think Black Hills Energy is having trouble with their link. I just asked Catherine if she can resend another link to them. But in the meantime, I'm going to give it my best shot here. And hopefully they can jump on when they're able to. So let me bring up the map of the work.
I was gonna say, maybe do we want to switch an agenda item and then wait for them to get on, Terry?
I think that's up to the council. We can wait if you would like to, or I can give it my best shot.
Mr. Mayor, could we do the HPC thing really quick? I don't think it'll take too much time, and then we could do Black Hills.
You're so optimistic, Tony. Sure, I think that sounds fine. So Terry, if they jump on, just shoot me a text and let me know. But yeah, let's. Is everybody okay with jumping ahead to the next agenda item and coming back to this? Okay. All right. This is item number 11. This has been continued for a couple meetings, appointments to boards and commissions. I think it's gotten caught up a little bit by our code and some ambiguity, but maybe we should clear the deck and just deal and not make this out to be a Supreme Court nomination. So we had a lot of conversations last time. We didn't, I believe what continued it was we did not have an understanding whether there was 3 or 4 openings. My understanding is there are 4 openings. There's 4 applicants. The only question was one of the applicants was applying, I believe, for her 5th or 6th term, and our code specifies 2. So, Councilor Hershey, you have some thoughts.
Well, we met again in the interim, the HPC, and I want to thank them very much. So they're all seem to be fine with that and in favor of that. I think there was at some point, and Davis can remind me, that there was a motion on the table, and then we got sort of bogged down in the 3 or 4 thing. But it's definitely 4. So if maybe Catherine or Steve could remind me, there was a motion just to allow these 4, and then we're going to look at it later.
I wasn't sure if we actually got that motion in and if there was a second or not, but I would make the motion to allow the 4 to continue in their roles at the HPC.
And I would second that motion. And one of them is new, Mr. Mayor. One of the people is new.
Charlie.
I'm certainly going to support the motion, but I think that we should change our code and either say we're not going to have term limits or limit it to 2 and take the discretion out. Seems to me we're going to do one or the other. We spent a lot of time on this issue. It comes up repeatedly, and either take it out or so there you have 2 limits, you're done, or take out the discretion, just not at term limits.
Any other discussion? Steve Davis.
Well, I think it deserves further discussion, but I think that probably ought to be a separate agenda item in the future. And tonight we all just pass on the motion and move on to Black Hills Energy, if that's possible.
Ms. Figueroa.
I think we would be happy to schedule that at the next agenda And I also wanted maybe at the next agenda to talk with you guys about how we're trying to do the interview process, because I think we have some suggestions that might be helpful that I want you to consider.
All right.
Do we
Go ahead, Shelley.
need to designate, or does the motion designate who will be the alternate? Because I believe the 4 positions open, one of them is an alternate.
That's my understanding as well.
I mean, I'm fine with that, or you could let the board decide, or you could make the person that you're concerned about the alternate, Mr. Mayor, who had that lengthy term of service.
It does not matter to me at all who's the alternate.
I would recommend the board decides.
I'm
I
okay
would-
with that.
And I would second that if that's part of Steve's motion. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just looking at staff report and it says there's 4 openings. Doesn't mention anything about an alternate, so.
I believe the alternate position is open as a position. Go
Yeah,
ahead, Carl.
let's not get bogged down in this. Let's let the board decide. Yes.
The board didn't decide, so with me.
Okay. All right. Catherine, can you please call the question?
Willman,
Yes,
Cook,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes,
Godus,
No.
Hershey,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right. All right. Are we ready now to go back to the Black Hills Energy update?
We're still having some technical difficulties. Depending on the council's will, I could try giving up the presentation, or we could wait for a little while longer and we could keep working on it. But
I think they need to be telling us what's going on with this, if at all possible. At some point, Terry will make you do it, but
okay,
let's
keep
see.
working on it.
Okay. Is everybody okay with jumping ahead to the budget hearing? Okay. Steve Boyd.
Good afternoon, evening, everybody. Can you guys hear me okay?
Fantastic.
Yes, okay. I'm on a conference room screen, so you won't be able to see me tonight, but I'm glad you can hear me. So tonight is, I guess, my night to listen and not talk. I did say that we haven't really gone through the broadband budget in this format with you. So if it's okay, I'm going to throw it to Matt to do that quickly. Then we can hear whatever the public would like to say. And Mr. Mayor, if I could just have 1 minute after that to tell you guys about a couple of small changes that you'll see between now and then, I think we can wrap this one up. So Matt, do you want me to share my screen and put the broadband budget up, or?
That'd be fine. Yeah, page 52.
Okay.
It's a fairly simple budget. It's basically just covers regular employees. We have 4 employees right now. We'd be hiring a 5th one in 2021. Standard health insurance, FICAs, all those fun things. Professional development, we did throw a little bit in because IT people are really good at taking classes online. Technologies, interest, all those fun things. Technologies is computers and software. But going to the capital outlay, I guess, is really the things you guys would be most interested in. Those are large chunks of money. So the $3 million in capital outlay for outside plant construction is exactly what it sounds like. We took our 5 years we were going to spend the money on and compressed it down to 2. Steve, you're not muted.
Sorry.
That's okay. So we compressed that down to 2 years. So we'll be spending a large chunk of money this year, next year, and a little bit into 2022, most likely. There's broadband vehicles. We'll have new employees. We'll have to purchase some vehicles for them to get around town. And then there's includes FTTH, ONPs, and fiber drop powering. ONPs really is not the correct acronym, but that's okay. Basically, that 778 is the drops from the poles to houses. Those cost money. We do get reimbursed over the lifetime of the contracts. The ONPs are basically purchasing in bulk all of the modems that go with the houses. Those are pieces of equipment that we purchase and we either lease or rent to the people. And then fiber drop powering is basically exactly what it sounds like, is the powering of those drops themselves. So we're looking at about a $4 million budget next year. And once again, like I said, that's the 5-year compressed down to 2 years. So pretty simple budget. It's all in the pro forma that we've seen. This is nothing really changed from the pro forma that we had. It's just in a 2-year program.
Charlie.
Matt, will this, with this in 2021, will we have broadband throughout the city? Everybody be available to everybody by the end of 2021?
In theory, no. It's a 2-year build out. We started about the middle of this year, towards the end of this year. So in theory, it will float into 2022 also, but this is a large chunk of the city. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Any questions about the broadband budget? Not the rollout, not the timing, although the timing does interest some of us, but just the budget. All right. Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
Steve, is it back to you?
Yep, and I think, Mr. Mayor, we're ready to invite any comments from the public if we have any.
All right. I'm looking over at the attendee list. There's much that people complain about what we spend and what we don't spend and where we spend it at. We are not having a lot of participation in our budget, but that's okay. Now's the time to do it. Now's the time the public can come and tell us where we're screwing up. But apparently they don't care, or they're very busy right now. I'm sure everybody's watching the candidate question and answer night sponsored by KMTS in the chamber. Plug. All right, I guess we'll bring it back. And this is not really our time to, well, I guess we can. I guess we can make comments on it. We will be passing it at the next board meeting, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Is there anything that anybody has globally questions concerned about? I think we've gone through, just for the public, we've gone through line, not line by line, but department by department, fairly in depth. We had questions. If we had questions, we had staff there to answer it. We've, Steve, you've probably said ad nauseum, if any of us or anybody has questions about it, we can go to you, get those questions asked, and hopefully answered to the best of your ability and our understanding. And so, just so the public knows, this isn't just a first blush, taking everything. We have gone department by department and looked at it very closely. So if we're not asking very detailed questions, it's not because you're not seeing it, but we've done it before in numerous work sessions prior to this. So Charlie, go ahead.
Sorry, just a quick question. We had the discussion earlier tonight about the $10,000 in the airport budget. Is that still in? I didn't go back and look for that, but I thought because we talked about it earlier tonight. In my view, that should not be in there.
No, that's not in there, Counselor.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? All right. Christian, we're running ahead so far. See how bad we can screw this up later. All right. Thank you for that, Steve and Matt Langhorst. Next item.
Before we move on, Mr. Mayor, could I just have just a second to mention a couple of things that you guys will see different when we actually submit the budget in a couple of weeks. The first thing is I was asked by the tourism board to reduce their director's salary by $5,800 and add that money into their advertising budget. So that will be a small change that you guys will see. The second thing is just to kind of clarify the broadband electric fund thing. There's $181,000 of interest that we're paying on the broadband bond that we issued. And this budget sort of shows it coming out of broadband. What will actually happen is that it will come out of broadband into the electric fund as a transfer, and then we'll service that debt from the electric fund because those are the revenues that secure the bond. So no change net to anything, but that's a small change there. And then the third thing is we've got our preliminary assessment now on property taxes. And what that means is that we under forecasted that just a little bit. So we're gonna have a little bit more money in our general fund from property tax. And the rural fire district will have a little bit more money. So that means that their transfer into our fire department will be a little bigger, which means our transfer from the general fund into our fire department will be a little bit smaller. So the net impact of that really is not very much, but it does pull down what we originally thought was going to be a $230,000 quote unquote loss from the general fund to about a $25,000 loss to the general fund. So there's nothing very material in there, but I did want to make sure that you guys knew that those three changes will happen between now and what you guys actually vote on in 2 weeks.
All right. Thank you for that. That's helpful. We'll keep trying. Do we have anybody from Black Hills yet?
Yeah, we do, Jonathan. They're on, or at least they're able to be in. I think he's in the attendees list. Jason Cox.
Okay, let me promote Jason. Oh, there he is. Jason, I'm really glad that you guys are better at delivering natural gas than Comcast is at delivering high-speed cable.
That's good to hear, I guess. At least we hope to be good at what we do.
So Jason, you want to give a description of where we are and what we're thinking about, and I'll help as needed.
Okay. Yeah. Basically, what we're planning is sort of in conjunction with the South Midland project, based on the fact that we had to lower our existing feed to Glenwood to accommodate some of the changes to the elevation of the road and the dynamics of the road with the roundabout and everything going in. We were going to have to replace a significant piece of that line anyway. And then through engineering, with talking with them, talking with the management, it just looked like a good time to go ahead and kind of extend that project out for us and replace the line from our rake station at it's Cardiff Road, right at the mini storages out by the airport, to Old Cardiff Bridge Road. We'd upgrade the old 6-inch that's in place there, put in brand new 8-inch pipe, which basically helps the overall infrastructure of the whole town. I mean, that's our main feed to Glenwood, and it's very difficult to work on it as a lowering project is what it really was going to be. We were going to lower several sections of that pipe, but honestly, it's almost easier just to replace that whole section because we have to keep the existing live until we have the new in, and that was going to be fairly difficult to try to do in just 3 or 4 different places. So engineering came back to us, said really with the growth that's happened in Glenwood over the time frame that line's been in, and the possibility of the new growth, that it would just be a good idea for us to upgrade and upsize that line. So it's about 4,000 feet of new pipe, and I don't know the exact. I guess I can't tell you the exact added volume of it, but it's fairly significant. It makes a big impact on the system, especially at the end of the system in the West Glenwood portion. And if there's a lot of growth still available out there in the Meadows area, and that would all be impacted off of that line as well. So that's what our plan is. It's probably going to, the whole project probably take us around 3 months with good. This time of the year, that's a tough thing to kind of formulate what the weather's going to do for us. But the sooner we get in there and we get our line moved, the quicker and easier it is for your contractor to come in and work on the road and have less conflicts between our contractor, your contractor, and just make it a smoother process, I believe, for both of us.
So Jason, this is Jonathan. One of my questions would be, how coordinated is this? We are going out to, hold on a sec, I'm getting some feedback here. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, that's less feedback, sorry. How coordinated is this with potentially a bidder? I think, Terry, we're going out to bid within the next 30 days, I believe, with South Midland. That's going to be a estimated like $12 to $14 million project and have significant impacts over the course of over a year. I don't want to extend that additional 3 months. So can we do this while everything else is tore up in the spring? Go ahead, Terry, if you want to, jump in. Anybody can jump in.
Sorry, I was on mute. Jason, I think was trying to kind of just describe their project as a whole. And it is true that, we've been aware of the need to, upsize or replace. And I guess in the end, Black Hills Energy is upsizing the line just a little bit to allow for future capacity. And because it is an old line, a thin-walled steel line. So, in terms of coordinating the projects, I think that Black Hills Energy was really hoping that this line replacement would be a lot shorter project and that it would have been approved sooner. And Jason, jump in if I'm getting anything wrong. I'm just kind of going off of the memory of the conversation that a couple of conversations we've had so far. And so, it's late in the season for them. And, Jonathan, you were correct. Our project is out to bid right now. We're actually expecting bids back on the 30th. So unfortunately, we're kind of at crunch time, essentially with both projects. Jason, did I get any of that wrong?
No. Our plan was to do our portion of this summer. COVID really knocked the snot out of trying to progress through getting the drawings in place, make sure we did all our proper investigation to make sure that, we did a pretty thorough set of drawings for this project so that we know where all our crossings are, where all of our complicated pieces of construction are going to be. And so it took everybody working from home and all those other dynamics. Things just took a long time to fall into place. And now we're at the end of the year where I'd rather not be doing this, but I know it extends the project by 3 months. Somewhat, I guess it does. But that extension, I think, is necessary to keep our crew from being in the way of your crew. Essentially, I've got to fly. I'm sorry. And I think the nature of this work is that our contractor has to do the trenching, they have to do the pipeline work, they have to do the work. So I know that it was kind of kicked around, maybe having whoever your bidder was do some of that trench work for us and stuff. And it's not something that we can do. It's, there's PHMSA rules, DOT rules, there's all these qualifications they have to meet, even just to dig the trench. So as opposed to having two crews in there and making just that much bigger of a mess and that much more conflict, we were trying to get out ahead of your contractor and essentially make it easier for both of us.
Okay, I'll probably have some questions in a bit, but Deborah, go ahead.
We kicked around some ideas internally, and I was wondering, Terry, would you like to kind of take council through like the pros and cons of doing the project together, and then maybe Carl give them some options if council is not happy with increasing the project by 3 months?
So, we actually, from a city standpoint, we don't have an option because of our federal funding to, to start later, for instance, with our project. Our federal build grant requires that we start in mid-December to meet the conditions of the grant. So I don't believe that we have an option to wait for instance, for Black Hills Energy to finish our grant or to finish their work. I'm sorry. That said, we do have the ability to have two contractors on the site at the same time. As a engineer, it's not something that I like to see happen because there are coordination issues and there are responsibility issues, I guess, with having two contractors on the site at the same time. Specifically with a project with the complexity that South Midland has, we have very tight traffic control requirements that, I believe both of our contractors will have to abide by. That said, I don't really see an option to delay our project or to not go forward, for instance, with the gas project, because, like the council's heard on other instances, the utilities underneath our brand new roads are really important. If we understand that we've got a failing water line or gas line or any utility, putting a brand new, very expensive road over it is not a good idea. So we have had internal conversations about how to handle this. And, while South Midland, I think, is complex from an engineering standpoint and from a management standpoint, one of the other big issues with the project is just the volume of people that pass through that site every day. At least a third of our population will be through that job site every single day, over 8,000 vehicles a day. So, we as a staff really wanted to have a robust public outreach program ahead of our project to make sure that the public was very aware of what was going to happen out there. And given that, Black Hills Energy has been delayed and essentially their project is now going to overlap ours, we felt strongly that, we need to incorporate them into our public information process, at least to some degree. And at this point, we are planning a neighborhood or a community, I guess it's going to be very broad, public meeting to introduce the project. Our initial intent was to introduce the South Midland project, but at this point, I think we also need to introduce the Black Hills Energy project. And we are thinking about having that on November 12th. We are in the middle of our bid process. Our bids are coming back on October 30th. We would like to propose a special meeting with the council on November 10th to accept a bid from this project, and then take that information and hopefully that contract and accepted bid to our public meeting on the 12th. So that was our run at trying to make sure that the public got the opportunity to know who the contractor is, and also not be surprised by Black Hills Energy starting their work without a robust public input process. So that was that's our most recent thinking.
Yeah, if I could follow up on that, Mr. Mayor, there's a couple of things from a right-of-way permitting and a franchise standpoint. It's critical that we control timing on this project. It's going to be one of the most impactful projects on South Glenwood and on the community as a whole that we're going to have. So it's just absolutely critical, knowing that they're going to overlap, that we feel that we have that public information meeting. And so that's why when we talked internally as a staff, we strongly recommend going to that special meeting on November 10th. I know that may not work for everybody, but as long as I can get 4 of you there, that's what I'd be looking for, because not only are we underneath some time pressures from the build grant, I certainly don't want to delay Black Hills getting started any longer than we need to. And so that was our best shot at being able to evaluate bids, come back with a recommendation, and get moving forward as quickly as possible.
So, and Jason, maybe you can tell me a little bit, or Terry, what will be the impacts? Let me just say, cards on the table. If this was something, this South Midland rebuild was something that had happened in any other kind of vacuum without the Grand Avenue Bridge happening just 3 years ago, this would be a once in a generation kind of impact to a community. Obviously, with Grand Avenue Bridge, this is a little bit less than that, but still going to be a massive impact for a large population, portion of our population. And I have no appetite to extend that one extra day on the front end or the back end at all. And that's why I think our contract has probably some, lane rental and liquidated damages and those kind of things, because, we saw a 27th Street Bridge when that went down. Again, in retrospect, in hindsight, it wasn't a horrible deal, but when we were going through it, it was really impactful. So I don't want to put any more impact on the people in this part of the community for months. If it's an extra week, we can live with it. But what we got to have this happen in conjunction with our larger project. And if we have to start a little bit earlier, are we going to be going down to one lane? What does this look like, Jason?
Yeah, there would be a lane shift basically through the entire. Unfortunately, with the dynamics of what is out there now and the complexity of digging alongside the line that is in place, our line, and then crossing the other utilities, it's kind of a slow go. I mean, my contractor's only estimating that we're going to get about 80 feet a day. So 2 joints of steel pipe a day installed for 4,000 feet. It's so it won't be we won't have like the whole length of the road, one lane for our entire project. It would be a couple hundred feet at a time as we slowly creep down the road. But that's just, unfortunately, that's the nature of steel pipeline work. Is it's a fairly slow go when you're working amongst an already complex infrastructure of ours and other utilities. Working with I guess my fear is that if we don't get out ahead of your contractor, working in conjunction with the contractor, I don't want to be the reason for any delays on the project, on your project, due to the fact that, we have to move our facility before you can complete certain sections of the road. I may be able to get those. I hate to piecemeal it together, but it's, I guess, a possibility that we go in and hit those high points first and try to be out of the way to where they have their larger amount of elevation change so they can work in there. But it's going to be tricky with both of us in there. Not that it can't be done. It's going to be interesting.
All right. Thanks. Any other questions either for Terry or Jason? Terry, Shelley, go ahead.
Looks like Shelley.
Yeah. Hi, Jason.
Hi.
Did you just say 8 feet a day and you have 4,000 feet?
80 feet a day.
80 feet a day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is still, that's not, that's pretty slow, but unfortunately, like I said, they're short work hours. I think we're looking at, I believe, 9 to 3. It would be the work hours for the day.
Okay.
That we've discussed. So that's fairly, to get set up, start digging, get pipe in the ground, and backfill that trench in that time frame just doesn't leave us a lot of time, and it's fairly complex work.
Right. Is that you're welding those joints, I assume?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, and with the dynamics that the shoulder's not real wide there, the line is planned to go off the shoulder of the road, right on the edge of the west shoulder, I guess it would be. We have to work in the lane to do the welding, and kind of the tractor is going to the backhoe will end up halfway in the lane. So that's why we have the one lane. Most of it is that's our work area, essentially, is that lane.
Okay, but you think you can one lane that versus closing off the whole road?
Oh, absolutely.
With that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'll leave it up. I certainly think it's important if we can overlap it with our project, but I'd leave it up to all the engineers on this project to figure out how that might work. But I can see that it's going to be complicated. So.
And just so you know, you guys know, we do have very strict traffic control requirements for our contractor. And when we write the permit for Black Hills Energy, we're going to go ahead and transfer those same requirements to their contractor. We do have a disincentive clause within our contract for work within those peak hours, those peak morning hours from 7 to 9, and then also usually from 3 to 6. But because we don't have an incentive and disincentive on the Black Hills Energy contract, we'll just not allow work during those times. So as Jason said, they'll be working under a very limited work window.
So Terry, does our staff know, I mean, is this line stacked on top of our utilities, or is it just mixed the whole way through the corridor?
No, I'm going to pull up that map again. Jason, do you know, I know you guys have tried to do a SU plan out there. Do you have an idea of where the other utilities are in the corridor?
From what I saw, that we cross electric, we cross several lines, but the water and the sewer are out in the road. And we're more on the shoulder of the road. So there's pretty significant separation between everything. There's a lot of overhead electric on kind of the north end of what would be our project. And then the separation between the electric sits quite a ways to the west down the shoulder of the road. Other than crossing electric, there's really no interference with them. And then, like I said, sewer and water were towards the center line of the road, and that was 6 to 10 feet from where we would be.
Tony.
I was just unmuting myself. Terry, there's a very good reason that I'm not an engineer or a doctor, and it has something to do with almost failing calculus at Aspen High School. So this is not my area of expertise, and I think the reason we have someone who's smart like you and Shelley, who's also an engineer, is that I think it'd be best, Mr. Mayor, if we let the experts decide, including Terry, who is expert at the traffic control and stuff, what the best thing is to do and what's best for the people. Because I just, it's difficult to say really with costs and everything, which is better and balancing. I'm certainly feel bad for Jonathan, who's going to get stuck in bad traffic, but we have to look at the big picture for everyone too. And that's a large figure of people that travel through that area. So we have to be considerate while we save everybody money and do it as quickly as possible. But again, I'm not the expert. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. I agree 100% with that. I guess my suggestion would be that we have our city attorney and city engineer work with Black Hills to minimize to the highest degree possible the length and the duration and the impacts to the traffic patterns and the residents of the area in conjunction with the overall South Midland rebuild. Is that enough direction?
I think so. Yeah.
And Terry, just so you know, I did forward that traffic control plan for addendum to my contractor. He saw no problems with staying on track with your requirements.
Great. One more thing to mention on the traffic control. Not only are we controlling the the times where the contractor can actually take a lane, but we also control the amount of delay. I think it's a 5-minute delay on either side and 1,500 feet of work open at any one time. So there are other requirements in terms of maximum delay too. I will work with Jason, and I will also work with Carl, and we will make sure that we write that permit well. And transfer, the requirements, the same requirements that we'll have for our contractor back to Black Hill Energy's contractor, and do the best we can. I think that, I know, Jonathan, you didn't want to have any additional duration out there. I really, as much as I hate to, I would like to get Black Hills Energy in there, if possible, immediately after the public meeting, just so that the public out there is aware of what's happening, and they can try and get out of our way. They do have somewhat of a temperature dependent project, welding of the steel, and they've got a coating that needs to be applied to the steel line. So it's going to be difficult for them to construct in the winter. I'm also hoping, without knowing, what contractor we'll get yet, and what their schedule will be, that our contractor may start on the far north end of our project, further towards Haggard Lane, and be working on the retaining walls there instead of being in the road. So, we may not have direct overlap, but we have to wait until we receive a bid to see what their proposal is.
Great. Deborah has her hand up. I just want to mention one thing. Obviously, 9 to 3, that is helpful because that avoids school. I don't know what the new school schedule is because I really haven't checked, and apparently my kids go back to school Monday, but or maybe the next Monday. But if they do start, they have historically started at Silvers Elementary at 8:15. So if you wanted to extend that window to get more length in until 8:30 until 3, that's probably doable. I'll leave that, Terry knows all about school schedules and what we have there. I will also mention Wednesdays are early out typically, so we'd want to be considerate of that. And then really this is by and large after hunting season. When you would start is after hunting season, before ski season, so the weekends are wide open. Just don't start in section sheet 2004 on a Saturday morning before 9 a.m. That'd be my only request. Deborah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask council to please check your schedules. You don't have to do it now, and let us know if you're available for the evening of November 10th, because we would really love to get this awarded then, so Terry has the contractor with her at this public meeting.
Deborah, November 11th, just so everyone knows, is a state and court holiday. I wasn't planning. I'm free. I checked my schedule and it was very busy, but I'm free. I'm kidding. But just so you know, the 11th is a holiday, sort of. 11th.
Thank you.
All right, Jason, thank you so much. Thanks for taking my abuse, and thanks for coming before us.
Sure. Thanks for letting me.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you. Next on the agenda is, we're jumping back. All right, we have our first land use meeting. We're 2 minutes ahead of time. It's planning item 1520. This is consideration of a request for the preliminary plat to amend the Oasis Creek Sub-Creek Track A subdivision to allow for the construction of duplexes on lots previously platted for single-family homes. Who is presenting tonight, Trent?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I know you've all been waiting for the land use items, anticipating it, but I just want to go ahead and give Alyssa a heads up. I think we will want to promote for this item, and I'll try to speak those names out slowly. Mr. Doug Pratt, Mowgli Cooper, who I think is listed in the attendees list as Moog Coop, Tate Fairbanks, and Mary Steinbrecker. Or sorry, Mr. Mayor, if you're the one taking care of that. I did not see Scott Grosscup in the attendees list, but he may not be here tonight. I'm sure that Doug can fill us in on that.
He might be calling in. There's 2 people that have called in from phone numbers. So if you are somebody who's called in from a phone number, press *9 and raise your hand. If you're Scott Grosscup or somebody else who needs to be promoted, I'll promote you. Okay, I see that. Oh, doesn't allow me to promote you. I see that. I'm sorry. I see the 027 or 274-0701. I can't promote whoever that is. But just if you want to talk, you can lower your hand. But when you want to talk, I'll just assume that you're somebody who's affiliated with this, and I'll call on you.
Okay, if we're ready, this application is planning file number 15-20, and it is a subdivision amendment included as a preliminary plat application for Oasis Creek Tract A. And just to give you a little idea of where this is located, of course, it's in the Oasis Creek neighborhood and circled in yellow on the graphic on the right there, and it's zoned PUD R3. That's planned unit development multifamily residential. And this property, Tract A, is currently a vacant 5.27 acre, 7 parcel site. A little bit of history about this property. In 1980, Oasis Creek was annexed into the city and zoned PUD, and Tract A was a parcel that allowed for up to 50 multifamily units at that time. Back in 2016, a subdivision without development plan was approved by City Council, allowing for 6 single-family home sites, averaging approximately 26,000 square feet apiece in size, and it included 1 open space tract of approximately 74,000 square feet. A variance was also granted at that time for a required sidewalk in lieu of the construction of a path. What the applicant is requesting tonight is actually an amendment to that subdivision to instead allow, instead of limiting the construction of those lots to single family homes, to allow for duplexes for a total of 12 on each one of those lots. I want to point out that there are no changes to the lot boundaries or the sizes of these parcels. We just want to specifically change allowing single family homes to duplexes. And the reason why that's a big issue with this application is that because back in 2016, they very specifically stated that they wanted to do single family homes at that time. So we're bringing it back through the process for which it was previously approved, even though the titles of those processes have changed with our development code that was adopted back in 2018. Section 706060B3 F.4 outlines the approval criteria for a preliminary plat, and one is being consistent with the comprehensive plan. This property is shown in yellow on the graphic on the right is classified as single family residential. That definition for that classification actually outlines it as intended for single family homes as well as duplexes. Numerous community goals and related objectives are by this proposal, one being promoting economic development, preserving our small town character, convenient transportation, infill development, social diversity, and preserving natural resources. All of those specific objectives really kind of align with the intent to provide for infill development within the city. 2, will comply with the applicable zone district standards. Again, it complies with the area and density requirements outlined in the Oasis Creek subdivision PUD. 3, will comply with the use, dimensional, design, and development standards. The Oasis Creek subdivision covenants and the PUD actually allow for their own related standards. The specific parking variance that was granted back in 2016 really no longer applies because this specific subdivision is exempted from requiring the installation of sidewalks. 4, provides the layout of lots, streets, blocks, driveways, utilities, and drainage and other public facilities that minimize disturbance to sensitive areas. Again, this lot is located by existing streets and utilities and the topography and facilities that are already within that neighborhood and entitled for development. Vehicle trips along Traver Trail will increase, will actually double to 114 average daily traffic. That would relate to 10 a.m. trips and 13 p.m. peak hour trips. Drainage with this proposal is actually addressed on for the entirety of the development, as where back in 2016 it was left to a lot by lot design. And the layout does continue to utilize the gentler slopes at the site. Again, utilizing those existing established lots. 5, the proposal provides evidence of public water and sewer. Again, we addressed that previously. 6, identifies and adequately mitigates known natural hazards. The geotechnical report submitted for this did not identify any hazards which limit the subdivision or development of the lots. However, we still require a site-specific subsurface geotechnical report prior to any building permit. 7, if applicable, proposes reasonable project phasing in terms of infrastructure. The development of each lot individually seems appropriate in terms of a phasing plan. I will point out that the design standards outlined in the OCS PUD covenants do require that each building permit is approved via their architectural control committee, and that's kind of a process that the city, knowing that architectural committee exists, refers applicants to the group so that they can meet their needs prior to us issuing a building permit. It's not necessarily something that is required, but just a process that we do to try to limit any conflicts. Multifamily dwellings are allowed on lots in the development as opposed to OCS. There's been a lot of conversation previously on whether or not the applicant needs a variance from the Architectural Control Committee to allow the duplexes as opposed to single family homes. I want to point out, and the Planning and Design Commission had some concerns and troubles with this, that municipal governments do not administer neighborhood or homeowner association covenants. This proposal, this application, we do not feel will negatively impact the process that the applicant may need to go through with the neighborhood. We have been clear that that the city's approval of this application would not circumvent any approval that's needed by the neighborhood. We did receive a lot of comments on this application. In terms of staff, we received some comments from the engineering department related to the drainage report, geologic hazards, the need for the homeowners association to maintain common improvement areas within this development, sidewalk trail concerns, utility needs, and general building and site development requirements. We received comments from adjacent property owners or citizens, both in opposition or just outlining concerns they have with this proposal, as well as in support. You can see the names of the folks that we received comments from, which were included in your packet. The Planning and Zoning Commission kind of addressed some of the issues that we've already talked about, and that would be, how this proposal compares to the previous subdivision approval granted by the city. Again, we're not responsible for administering any of those said covenants. However, we're not intending to bypass those by approval of this request. There was some discussion about the anticipated design of these units as single story. I think the applicant intends to provide for something that is a single level with optional walkout basements that would allow for folks that are aging in place, not necessarily ready for assisted living, but would like something that's more amenable to their lifestyle and where they are in life. Discussions about the sidewalk that was previously granted, access to the lots, and then the existing parking issues along Trevor Trail in the neighborhood. Ultimately, they decided to vote unanimously 5-0 to recommend approval of this with conditions. Staff also recommends approval with conditions, and you can find findings and conditions for that on page 2 of the staff report. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Any questions? Shelley. Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you. Trent, I had a question on the parking variance because that came up a lot in the public comment that there seems to be a parking issue. When was that granted? I might have missed that in there. And is that open for any kind of a solution to work with maybe the ACC of Oasis Creek to try to resolve some of those parking issues?
Yeah, I think the applicant may be able to speak more to this. So it wasn't necessarily a parking variance; it was a sidewalk variance.
Okay, I missed that.
that was a requirement back in 2016. A sidewalk in the entire neighborhood has been exempted from our code as a requirement for construction or payment fee in lieu of.
Okay.
But the parking issue, is something that I think that they are maybe willing to work with the neighborhood. It's just not necessarily something that the city wants to require improvements for because it's not outlined in our code.
Okay, so that sidewalk variance is neighborhood wise. Was that part of the process we went through where engineering kind of designated some streets within the city where sidewalk was not required?
Correct.
Okay. Because I guess I'm looking just a little insight into that. I'm just wondering if sidewalk in this section and kind of cleaning up that street area and street trees or something might help with that parking issue, but just a thought. We can talk about that later.
Well, to be honest, I think development of these lots will limit the parking in that area. I mean, you're not going to have cars parked and blocking someone's driveway. The city could provide some potential enforcement, but
if it were signed or something.
Correct.
I think that was mentioned. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Charlie.
Thanks. Trent, my question is lot 7 is designated kind of as an open space. Can the city require the developer or whoever to make sure that area is cleaned up? I mean, we just were talking earlier today and other meetings about vacant areas. And I know this is a lot different than above Walmart, but how do we make sure this area doesn't become a trash pit?
One thing is that it's obviously a visible location, and I think that would limit maybe some of trash accumulation or even maybe persons are locating there. But we have general regulations in the code that would limit trash or nuisances that we can enforce upon if necessary. It would be ultimately maybe our department and in cooperation with our PD. But one of the
my question is, I apologize for interrupting you. My question is who is going to be responsible for keeping lot 7 clean? If we issue a citation, who do we issue the citation to? Who owns that property?
One of the items that we would require, Charlie, prior to recording this plat would be details for coordination of the common elements, whether that be the drainage feature that's on that lot, any common landscaping. So it would be the homeowners association that would be developed for Tract A specifically.
Oh, I thought I read there was not going to be a separate set of covenants or homeowners. Maybe I missed that. Okay. Thank you.
Shelley.
Sorry, one other quick question, Trent. One of the other comments they had from the public was concern about the lighting on the buildings. We have in our code that exterior lighting is supposed to be shielded and, kind of dark sky compliant, not going off the property onto neighbors. Who enforces that on the city? And is that part of the CO when the buildings are approved, or who within the city is responsible for making sure that is complied with?
Correct, Shelley. That is something that staff would evaluate at the building permit phase 1 for compliance with our code, making sure that it meets our lighting standards. Any issues with that thereafter are generally also directed to our department, and we follow up with a letter and enforcement if need be.
So is that checked at CO then, prior to CO?
Correct. Yeah, usually we evaluate that with the building permit and or confirm it with CO.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? No? Okay. I believe, Carl, jump in here, but I believe on all these land use applications, we were going to do which we have traditionally done. We are going to have presentation, take questions, turn it over for public comment, and then continue the meeting for the next meeting. Is that how you want us to handle this as well, Carl?
Yep, that's
okay. All right. Well, with that in mind, I will now open it for public comment. Please.
Can I hear from the applicant?
No, we're good. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Trent did such a good job. I thought we got it.
we got nothing to say.
Sorry, Doug. I apologize, but
No.
Man, Trent, you're just really, really thorough on that. Go ahead, Doug.
Yeah, my name's Doug Pratt, so I'm a planner working with the applicant. Tate Fairbanks is the applicant for this project. The Steinbreckers, Lydia Development Corp, which is the Steinbreckers on the property right now. So I have a very brief presentation, which is really maybe to give you more of a graphic overview of what this thing kind of might become as part of this duplex proposal on each of the lots. I think Trent did a very good job of demonstrating compliance with the code and all of that type of stuff. So with that, if I can share my screen, I'll give it a shot here, if that works. And let me try and pick the right thing. And
there you go.
There, can you see the screen?
We sure can.
Okay. So the proposal is to convert the 6 single family lots, which on this are actually labeled tract A1 through A6 to 6 duplex tracts, as Trent said. Each of those tracts are about a half an acre in size, maybe 25 to 26,000 square feet. Tract A7 is, as somebody already mentioned, is an open space tract. It's about 1.7 acres, so that will stay as an open space tract. Can you see my cursor on the screen? Okay, so there is an existing trail easement through the open space tract that comes off of Trevor Trail Drive across the property. This is actually the Steinbreckers property here, and accesses the cul-de-sac over on the other side. So that will obviously stay in place as part of the open space. I know there's an aerial photograph under this. It may not be completely clear, but this is a relatively open parcel. So it is seen, it doesn't have a lot of spots where I think folks might be able to congregate kind of out of sight, out of mind. So that was kind of one of the discussion points, I guess, and we can talk a little bit about Property Owners Association in a second. So this is kind of the graphic I think that you saw in the application. This is just an aerial photo without anything else on it, property boundaries or anything else, just to give you an idea about what the context for this tract is. If you can see my cursor, I'm kind of circling where the tract is. There's some kind of cluster homes that are here at the south side of the property. Some homes that have shared driveways over on the east side of the property. And then as you get around to the north and the west, these are kind of larger estate lot homes on that side of the property. So again, just to give you a little bit of a flavor for what's happening in the neighborhood. Next slide is to just show property boundaries. So you can see kind of scale of lots to the south and to the east. These are, like I said, about half-acre lots. So they're a little bit more in context with some of the larger lots that are to the west. But we are proposing to put a duplex, to put 2 units on each of the lots. So there's plenty of room. We estimated the size to be maybe about 2,400 square foot footprints, single story, with the ability to have a walkout basement just because some of the grades change. So I'll just kind of keep going, just kind of an overview. This is, again, kind of those footprints that I just talked about. I'll zoom in here in a minute. I'm just trying to show you this in the context of the neighborhood. This gives a little bit of three-dimensional. I know the Google Earth image is not three-dimensional, but you kind of get the flavor a little bit for kind of what the density is around the project. And actually, we feel like it's an opportunity for kind of a transitional density between some of the denser cluster stuff that's around the south and east sides to the more estate lots on the west side. So again, these are 2 units on each lot. Just to speak a little bit about duplexes, we do feel, even though there was the capability to do 50 multifamily units on this parcel, we do feel that while these are multifamily units, there are 12 units proposed. but it's also a little bit of a diversity of housing types without being terribly different from what's in the rest of the neighborhood. So even though they are duplexes, I think there'll be modules that are very comparable in scale to the residential areas around it. So this is just a graphic to give you a little bit of context for that. Again, I'm not an architect, so don't judge the architecture, but just trying to give you an idea about what this might look like in terms of massing. And then again, back to this, just as a little bit of a blow up of kind of the context for the neighborhood again. And then this last one is just kind of putting it all together, just to kind of to let you see just what an illustrator did with the concept to do duplexes on these six tracks. So as look around, the track established back, actually the lots were established back in 2016. So the subdivision requirements are all the same on this application as they were then. We're not changing lot lines or sizes. What we are changing is the ability to do duplex on each of the tracks. So with that, we have talked about having a property owners association because there will be 2 units on each tract. We do have to, there will be common elements on each tract. So we will have a property owners association that deals with maintenance and those types of obligations for the entire project. So it will be a sub-association that falls under the overall Oasis Creek covenants. So there's actually not an Oasis Creek Property Owners Association, but there are covenants that affect Oasis Creek. So we have worked a bit to make sure that we have plat notes on this that let Oasis Creek know that we, the covenants still apply. That being said, multifamily units are allowed on this tract A. So that's a brief overview, just maybe a little more graphic version of what the possibilities are for this project. And with that, I'll let you know too that Scott Grosscup is on the phone, so I think you let him in. He's traveling right now, besides the other applicant members that you have in Zoom. So thank you.
Thanks, Doug. And those are really pretty pictures, but would you mind not sharing your screen so then we can all be up on the screen a little bit larger? All right, thanks so much. And Doug, I'll direct this question at you. I was reading through some of the comments from some of the people who were opposed to this, and it keeps coming up, and maybe this is a trend question, but they're talking about the right way to have done this. I mean, I'm saying the right way is to secure the amendments with the subdivision first before putting it through P&Z. Can you, and maybe this is more a trend question, but can we talk about that, about some of this conflict of securing the approvals with the subdivision before the city and why that's important or not?
We had a lot of discussion about this, Mr. Mayor, at the P&Z level, and one of the I guess by happenstance with the last subdivision back in 2016, the applicant Mary and Jerry Steinbrecher and Doug was a part of that application as well. They went to the ACC first. That was not a requirement by city staff that they proceed in that direction. I think this time around they have assumed that they need to work with the ACC in some fashion, but they just decided to come to the city for the request first. In terms of us, we've received an application, and we will process that application. Again, we do not see this request or this approval as bypassing anything that would be required at the neighborhood level.
So even if this is approved potentially by us, it would still have another layer to go through with the local neighborhood?
Well, you may hear from Scott on that, but I think there's some question as to whether, what authority the neighborhood or the ACC has. Again, the city doesn't really necessarily want to get into that conversation at all. And we don't want to, ultimately do not want to be required to implement items that are agreed to between the applicant and the neighborhood that are not outlined in our code as requirements.
If I could just jump in on the end of that, Mr. Mayor, and actually no jurisdiction does, enforce private covenants. So to the extent that there are any restrictions or anything else going on, it's not in our purview to review, to enforce, or to address. We look at what's in our code and that's what we stick to. So.
Would the applicant, so I get that, our code, it's good, we approve it, yay, we're ready to go. But then,
yeah, they may have some other steps that they need to go through with the homeowners association or an HOA. Any applicant may have that. A great example would be when things get approved out at Glenwood Meadows. There's a whole different array of private covenants that apply that those owners and applicants have to work through before they can go vertical with construction. It's just something we just don't. I mean, it's not unusual, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I see. Okay. And then Trent, one last question I have for you. Sorry, I guess I'm jumping back to all the staff questions. If this was not approved, then the underlying approvals, for the 50 multifamilies, is that off the table totally because they rezoned it in 2016?
No, as it concerns the city, I do not think that they could submit an application for the development of 50 units there because not you necessarily, but City Council approved back in 2016 a subdivision that was based on comments from the applicant and outlined in that application that limited to single family homes. So, I think we would raise an eyebrow and we would say, I don't think you can move forward with that development at this time, not based on comments that you made and represented in 2016.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for the applicant or staff? Now I'll turn it over to the public and open public comment. Okay, I do not see anybody that is raising their hand to speak on this at all. So I will now close public comment and bring it back for a motion to continue to the next meeting.
I would make that motion. I'm sorry. I'd second it from Shelley.
All right, it's been moved by Shelley, seconded by Tony to continue. All in favor, signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right, motion carries. We'll continue this to the next agenda item or next meeting. Next item number 14. This is planning item 4420. This is a consideration of a request for special use permit for a retail marijuana establishment in the M1 mixed use corridor district. Is this you again, Trent?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, if you would please promote Peter Fornell. I think it's just listed as Peter in the attendees list. Vicky Rivas and Brandon Miner.
Got it.
Thank you. And I'll now share my screen with you. The next application is for Martin's Medicinals. It's a request for a special use permit as outlined in planning file number 44-20. This property is on M1 mixed corridor, or mixed use corridor rather. Existing at this property is approximately half an acre 2-parcel site that contains currently a 1,000 square foot liquor store and a 1,000 square foot former convenience store. Fuel sales are still ongoing at this site. And I do want to point out that this was the location of a previous retail marijuana establishment application that has since expired. If you remember, that was the Native Roots Gas and Grass. The applicants in the 1,000 square foot former convenience store piece of the property propose a retail marijuana establishment, and this site is located at 23 Melray Road. Section 70-2030E and Table 30.1 outline retail marijuana establishment, excluding cultivation, as requiring a special use permit in the M1 zone district. There at the bottom of the screen, you'll see an existing photo of the east elevation of the property. Section 70-30-30E11 outline the retail marijuana establishment review criteria, B being a license required by the city, similar to alcohol sales in the city, that, you know, if the land use special use permit is approved, they would still be required to work with the city clerk's office to obtain a related license for the sale of marijuana. C, retail marijuana establishments shall not be located within 500 feet of an existing public or private school. This site, based on the former application, we know is located 539 feet via a survey from Glenwood Middle School, and is also located 660 feet from the Glenwood Montessori School, which is located in the Glenwood Business Park that is north of the mall site. Shall not be located within 900 feet of another retail marijuana establishment. The closest facility is Osiris on Devereaux Road, which is approximately 1,400 feet to the southeast. It has to be permitted in the zone in which in M1 it is. D, the hours of operation are limited to 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily. They were required to comply with those hours of operation. Sign permit shall be obtained, which one will be required prior to any installation of signage at the site. One of the things that you may notice in the list of conditions is a requirement from the applicant, which they have agreed to, that was recommended by the Planning and Zoning Commission, to bring the existing non-conforming pole sign at the site into compliance. I, storage of retail marijuana shall not exceed 25% of the site. 4, there should be no discernible odor emitted from the property. And that's a common condition that has also been included that addresses any nuisance violations that we receive for this use in the future, something that we attach to all of the related special use permits that we receive for this use. And just as a point of note, you know, the city has actually never received any complaints for any of our retail or medical sales facilities. Any of the complaints that we've dealt with in the city have all been with cultivation facilities. Must also adhere to the special use permit criteria outlined in section 70-60-50E.
Is Trent having connection difficulties for anybody else, or is it just me?
E2, that's compatibility with the surrounding area. It is all as well as ongoing there in auto body and just you. Sorry, Jonathan. 2, the impacts have been adequately minimized. Again, that goes back to that potential odor condition we've included. Consistency with the general purpose and intent of the code. It seems to be consistent with the orderly development regulation of land use and design intent pieces. 4, comply with all applicable standards, which it seems to be. We do also recommend a condition to delineate the pedestrian access at the site along Melray Road. Don't know that that would necessarily be a sidewalk, but some maybe striping or identification that, you know, pedestrians are in that area, because currently it's a pretty wide open access point along Melray. 5, conforms with the comprehensive plan. This site is classified as mixed use, and it seems to address some of the community goals and related objectives, including promoting economic development, maintaining Glenwood Springs as a regional center of Garco, preserve small town character, convenient transportation, infill development, social diversity, and preserving natural resources. 6, minimizes adverse impacts to health, safety, and welfare, and we have not identified any means by which it negatively impacts health, safety, and general welfare. Engineering did provide some general comments to us related to fuel pumps or underground storage, CDOT access and drainage permits, general building and site development requirements. We did not receive any comments from adjacent property owners. The Planning and Zoning Commission discussed many of these same issues that I've identified previously. They ended up recommending unanimously 5-0 to recommend approval with conditions of the application, and staff also recommends approval with conditions as outlined in pages 1 through 2 of your staff report. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions? Okay, I think this is the part where we hear from the applicant, right? All right, who is, anybody want to speak on behalf of the applicant?
Well, this is Vicki Revis, and Trent has covered most of the details of our application, and we've been a part of the community for many, many years on a different site with Martin's Medicinals, and looking at a new location for our dispensary to serve the community.
All right, thank you. And Peter, I just promoted, I don't know if you got kicked out or I did not promote you to panelist, but would you like to comment as well?
Not really, just briefly to say thank you for your assistance with this all. And hello to Tony Hershey. I didn't realize, Tony, you're a councilman in Glenwood Springs. I haven't seen you for years. Good to see you're out doing your thing.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's been your project in Aspen. I think we need to get that approved, right?
Yeah, I know you were instrumental in helping me there, and I appreciate that. And I'm excited about coming down and doing some business in Glenwood Springs. So,
hi, Peter. It's nice to see you.
All right. Thank you, staff, for that presentation. Thank you, applicants, as well. We will now turn it over and open up public comment.
One other point that I would make, maybe just before I'm finished on this, the applicant has indicated that they would like to do some redevelopment of the site, but they're trying to make sure that they can secure this use there first. So we would anticipate, and hope that would be something that we would review in the future. If so, that would require an amendment to the special use permit. So even if the threshold of development did not bump this up to your consideration, if the regulations stay the same as they are today, you would still be considering amended SUP. So just a thought.
And just real quick, I guess technically we're in public comment, but real quick question. Is the applicant the new owners of the entire property, or just is this condominiumized? I know it's in our packet. I'm sorry, I just don't remember.
I'm under contract to purchase the 2 parcels that exist there, and the contract is contingent on what we're working on now.
And does those parcels include the gas, and the 2 interior parts, the liquor store, and then the?
Yes, it does. It includes
okay. The whole corner. Okay.
Yeah, the whole corner.
Thanks. All right. I don't see anybody have held a public comment open enough that we're all jumping in on it, or at least Trent and I. So I'll close public comment. And I'll bring it back for a motion from Tony to continue this to the next meeting.
Thank you, Your Honor, or Mr. Mayor, Honorable Mr. Mayor. I would ask to continue this to the next meeting, please.
Charlie?
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Tony, seconded by Charlie. All in favor, signify by raising your hand and/or saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you very much, Trent.
Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Peter and Vicki.
Yeah, thank you very much. And that continuation is to October 29th, is that correct?
No, it would be I believe it'd be the November 5th meeting. We meet at the 1st and 3rd, but October is a 5 Thursday month.
Okay, okay. All right, great. Well, thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys. And if anything changes, staff will let you know. If meeting gets canceled or we get a full meeting and needs to continue, they'll let you know.
Great.
Cool. Thanks, guys. All right. Next item, planning item. This is 16-20. This is item number 15. Consideration of requests for a determination regarding whether a new applicant is a substantial change to or is materially different from a previously submitted application. Trent, again?
Hey, thanks again, Mr. Mayor. If you would please promote Chris Hawkins, who I think is identified in the participant list as Alpine Planning LLC, as well as John Diet with Kine Castle.
Done.
Okay.
And can I ask you a quick question, Trent? I was just looking at the packet, and were those P&Z minutes? There were two sets of minutes, but one of them seemed to be for something else, or was I misreading them? You had the P&Z minutes for this.
Yes, I did. I hope they were for the right minute, for the right meeting.
I'll just check. I'm sorry. My fault.
I apologize if not. And I'm going to share my screen with you here, and let me know once you can see that PowerPoint.
We got it.
Okay. And I'm going to just give a very brief introduction of this application and basically turn it over to the applicant, who has requested that you make a determination for them as the body that acted on this application previously, that what they propose today is substantially different or a materially different application, and which would allow them to proceed with this application through the typical review process, including a pre-application meeting, review and consideration by the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then back to you for a final decision. But this is planning file number 6120. And if you remember correctly, the former proposal was a 738 square foot retail marijuana establishment in Suite C of an existing commercial strip building at 2114 Grand Avenue, a picture of which is shown there at the bottom left. And back on June 18th, 2020, you voted, not coded, 5-2 to deny that application. And that was following the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation to you to also deny that back in May of 2020. Section 706030I5 of the municipal code outlines how we shall deal with the subsequent similar application, and it states that following denial of an application, the decision-making body shall not decide on applications that are the same or substantially similar within 1 year of the previous denial. This waiting period may be waived by the decision-making body, provided that there's substantial change to circumstances or new information available relevant to the issues or facts considered during the previous application review, or B, the new application is materially different from the previous application. For this request, you may either approve or deny the applicant's request. But again, that would require them to go back through the formal review process. So Chris, if you'd like to take over, Chris and John.
Sure. Hi, good evening, everyone. Let me share my screen real quick. Can everyone see my screen?
We can.
Okay. Thank you for considering this tonight. I know you've had a long agenda and I appreciate the time. So Trent gave the introduction on the code requirements. I'm not going to go through that. The new application, and this is the biggest change, it's kind of a little bit of a hierarchy. The new application will include all three suites: Suite A, which is the former barber shop; Suite B, which is the former pawn shop; and Suite C, which is the former frame shop. That together increases the total floor area involved to 2,989 square feet. The prior application was only for 779 square feet. That's about a 284% increase in the floor area of the new application. That's not all, habitable space per your code, so it's not driving the parking, but that's the biggest change, and that really filters down to a lot of different levels in the planning process. The added floor area obviates the need to expand the space, into the residential unit. So housing is going to remain a part of the property. There's some concern about loss of housing there. And more importantly, this use makes it more, the change makes the use more compatible with the surrounding area, specifically the hotel. It significantly minimizes parking impacts on surrounding areas and minimizes adverse impacts to health, safety, and welfare of the inhabitants of the surrounding areas and the city related to traffic and circulation. So the significant change in use, there's only one store on the property under the new application, not three. You're going to hear about that a little bit through my presentation. The frame shop and pawn shop are replaced by one store, and the applicant controls the entire commercial front of the property that provides one tenant, one point of contact for any issues. And this really addresses a lot of current concerns from the prior application, including ingress, egress, neighbor complaints, parking, et cetera, as you're going to hear about. There's significantly improved parking, and this is the third change. And it's a big change because there was a lot of concern on parking and ingress and egress with 3 different shops. Prior application included 16 spaces for 3 retail stores on the property, plus the residential space back there, 2 residential units. So that's a lot. The new application provides 16 spaces, and I'm going to break that down a little bit. It should be 14 that are solely to one business, with a couple for the residential units that are dedicated for residential parking. So it's really materially different as well because of the parking. This plan may be familiar to you. There are 10 spaces in front. There are 4 spaces in the rear, and then 2 spaces that are off the alley. I know today you'll see a photo that shows 3 back here, but we want to keep this access open in the back as well. So 2 of these spaces in the back, wherever they are, would be for the residential units, and then ideally it would be for the either the employees that do have to come here as well. But we think the 10 up front will more than adequately handle the parking. The habitable space per the code drives a parking requirement of 6 spaces, and there's 10 spaces in front. So we're 4 spaces overall over the parking requirement. So these added spaces in the back are just a bonus. We did want to point out that there is a plan to provide housing in the area. And we feel most employees will either ride the bus, walk, or the few that do have to drive can park in the rear of the property. Change makes the use more compatible, especially with the hotel. There was some overflow parking going over there, and there's some complaints about that. That won't happen anymore. It really eliminates parking impacts on surrounding properties and the adverse impacts to public health, safety, and welfare. The 4th biggest change is getting an easement. This is through Stinker's gas station. I love that name. With an easement, it'll allow for access via 22nd Street, and it allowed for shared access. And this will mitigate any access or traffic concerns and minimize impacts of the use on the surrounding areas. I don't know how many times I've driven through a parking lot trying to get to another lot, and I've never been able to do that because there's not joint access. This solves that problem. And when we submit the application, should you approve and agree with us tonight, we'll submit a binding agreement on the easement. And then after that, if it gets approved, we'll actually submit the access easement that's crafted and executed. If it's approved, that would be done as a part of the actual prior to the issuance of a license. But with the actual application, we'll have a binding agreement on the parties that states that easement will be provided. This just shows the cross circulation between here, so they can kind of come across and through and back out this way or back out that way. The enhanced odor mitigation will be provided. That's been a concern. I appreciate Trent stating that no stores have had complaints. The store certainly wouldn't as well. We are proposing a new vapor barrier and soundproofing between the retail area and actually the store space, including storage and the residential apartments. And odor will be mitigated by 5 of these air purifier units. So it's 5 times the odor control. The tenants won't smell it, and you will not smell it outside. No one at the hotel will smell this facility. This shows the wall where the new soundproofing and vapor barrier would be installed. Again, these air purifiers, this is kind of the tech of it. They're really big 26-pound carbon filter. I'm sure a lot of the shops have these, but it traps 95% of the airborne particles that are really small. Hopefully they actually capture other stuff, and then it purifies it overall. So we have 5 of those units proposed. The front commercial area will have its own separate air handling system from the rear residences, and there's no air handling between the front retail and the rear. And again, it renders this odors virtually undetectable and eradicating any impact on the surrounding area and those residential units, more importantly. But that said, the units actually, the residents have told the landlord that they have no concern with the store. They don't mind the smell. They're probably a customer of someone's store then. But here's an affidavit from the owner of the site already that agrees that odor is not an issue. We'd get a similar affidavit that's signed by the guests or the tenants, excuse me, and submit that as part of the new application. Material change number 7, there's no framing store opposition because the store is gone. They're pretty opposed to this. Sorry. There's also a material reduction in trip generation in the store. And this is really important because access and parking were huge issues. The elimination of the barber shop and frame shop reduces the trip generation by 105 average daily trips. And this was misstated a little bit in the memo because the store itself will only generate 97 average daily trips. So that reduction equals the shop about. You had the pawn shop reduction and the traffic goes down even more from that. We didn't have that in the traffic study that was a part of this, but the pawn shop elimination is going to improve this further. So there's really no increase, and actually could be a decrease in average daily trips by this change. There likely is. We're going to have our traffic consultant give a full summary of this change in a new application, should you agree on this material change. Another material plan change is the sign. Here's the current beautiful sign, a hodgepodge of signs on lovely railroad ties. This is actually somewhat occluding the front of a parking space. It's also blocking sight distance pulling out of the motel. This sign will be completely removed, and a new sign, a pole mounted sign, will go on one of these corners, and that will open up the sight distance and improve aesthetics significantly. It'll also add a little bit of depth to that parking space, which is needed. The last change, this is a new one. This isn't in your packet. Looking at the aesthetics of the site, and you can kind of see it through the little filter I have on here. The parking area needs to be fixed. It needs to be sealed. It needs to be restriped. There should be a few landscape planters out here on the sidewalk. A fence or a small landscape buffer needs to be added to the hotel. And new exterior skin needs to be put on this building and fixed up. And this wall back here that the bank can see and others can see needs to be repaired. And the applicant has agreed to fix the pavement, provide a new exterior, and add landscaping to the site within 1 year. We can actually, the plan we submit will show this in more detail, along with the parking plan of where we can put the planters and where we can put the fence and landscaping and where the new sign would go. So you can consider that. And again, that's a change. This is a fairly older shopping center. I don't want to say blighted, but it definitely needs to be fixed up. And my client is more than willing to do that. So in the end, we're just hoping you agree. There's a lot of changes here, and they all add up to be material plan changes. We fully understand and respect we have to go through the special use permit process, and we understand how that process works, and look forward to hearing from you. So thank you, and we can answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Charlie.
You know, one of the first comments made, and it took me a while to find it, was that the original application was only for Unit C. It wasn't for anything else. And I thought it was Unit A and C, and I just went back and found the June 18th application, and it says that Unit A was going to be used for limited office and C was going to be the shop. The only thing that's been added is the middle area, not both sides. So was that a mistake on your part that you said that A wasn't before?
The license itself application, as I understand it from my client, and John's on here, John Dyatt, he can maybe better answer that, was that Suite C was the only part for the retail store. This was just going to be used as an office. It wasn't a part of the licensed premise. And this could have been leased out. There's actually a small office space shown on this floor plan right here.
I think you answered my question. The original application had A being used as an office. I know that.
So if you could, maybe John can answer that question better than I, if you could allow John to respond.
Sure, go ahead, John. If you would like, or Charlie, do you feel like you had your question answered?
I got my question answered.
Okay, Shelley, go ahead.
I just had a question for either the applicant or planning staff, and that would be, since if this were coming in as a new application for the whole building, and then there's been an offer and to upgrade the parking and the landscaping out front, would that involve a whole new approval of a new parking plan for that front space?
I hate to get into the specifics of the application before we've received that and reviewed it, but I would be interested in potentially improving circulation at the site if we did receive a new application and there are not other limiting factors, other limiting uses at the site. But, again, that's going to have to be in coordination with the applicant.
Yeah, we're more than happy to look at that.
All right, thanks.
Other questions? I have a question for Trent. Trent, I know that we had directed, I believe, planning and zoning. I think the last time this came up, actually, when we denied this last time, we said, we want to know if the community thinks that enough's enough. And what are the guardrails on that? And I believe planning and zoning has taken up that conversation. What's the process? Or I guess I'm worried that the applicant is going to go through this. We might or might not approve it, but if we do approve it, they have to go back through the process, probably several months worth of time. And in the meantime, planning and zoning could make a recommendation to us and we could act on it and we say, nope, we've had enough. Like, this feels like a weird kind of limbo. Is there some kind of grandfathering that this group, the applicant, would fit under? Or like, I worry about the timing of all of this.
Yeah, absolutely, Jonathan. I mean, as long as we received and deemed complete an application from the Kind Castle or any other, company interested in this use in the city, we would process that application, even as we're considering code amendments for this specific use.
Yeah. And Your Honor, if I could just add, I sent an email to Trent this evening with that very question of when the Planning Commission was going to consider the regulations, and it sounds like it's in the October 27th meeting, which we're aware of for just the code amendments. Is that correct, Trent? Yeah, so we're aware of that, and it's, most jurisdictions that are adopting new regulations allow complete applications to be processed under the pre-existing regulations. In my experience as a planner. And then, once you adopt the new regulations, they become effective through your ordinance process, then no new applications have to meet the new standards. That's just my limited, broad experience with a lot of different ones. So thank you.
And can we ask, I think it's the applicant, to quit sharing the screen?
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
it's okay.
My bad.
Nope, you're fine. It's a wonderful graphic, but
yeah, thank you.
There we go. Thank you. All right. Any other questions of the applicant or staff? Okay, seeing none, we'll open this to public comment. There we go. Ms. Carmer, you have 3 minutes. Go for it.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the opportunity for public comment on this. I and my law firm represent Cedar Lodge Motel, which obviously is next door to this development. It was unfortunate. We just found out about this particular nature of the application when the agenda was posted. It's not a publicly noticed request, so we didn't have a lot of time to respond to the materials. But thank you for taking the letter that we submitted this morning, or excuse me, this afternoon, and then for comment tonight. It's our position that there is nothing materially different about this particular application and what the applicant's representative has described tonight. The increase in space, as Councilor Woman kind of pointed out, it's just the addition of that second unit B, and that's where the marijuana retail shop will actually be located. The unit C that was the retail space is now just going to be the waiting room. So they've just shifted that to the middle, and it is slightly bigger than the other one, but that doesn't justify a material change here. And it also further exacerbates the problems with the application. More space for the product means more space for a potential for odor issues, and obviously more product offerings, and that could increase the customer and hopefully for the company's sake, more customers, but that also means more traffic and parking issues. And the fact that they have those 10 spaces for themselves doesn't necessarily solve the problems with traffic and parking overflow onto the hotel property, because even with 3 different tenants, you still had overflow parking, and that's because the code requires a certain number of spaces based on square footage, not difference in uses. So you still have the same amount of commercial square footage in that particular building. Just because it's used by one company versus 3 doesn't mean that those problems are going to be avoided, especially if it is a busy retail shop. And with the number of employees they anticipate they've mentioned before having 10, that there's no guarantee that all of those employees are going to live close or ride the bus or anything like that. So with the number of employees and anticipated customers, we don't see the prospect of the parking issues going away anytime soon. And I don't, the applicant's representative said that having, one storefront here is going to make it more compatible with adjacent land uses. I don't understand how that could be the case. That's a very summary comment. There was no real support for that. So we just don't see how this is materially different. All of the issues are still going to remain, and the fact remains that this particular use is still incompatible with the surrounding area, which was one of the factors for denying it before. So it's the same use in the same location with just more space and a few more parking spaces that probably would have been used up otherwise. So we do not feel that there's a reason to reopen this application now. The applicant can do it again in a year. That's what the code allows for, but there hasn't been any substantial changes in the last 4 months that would warrant allowing the applicant to reapply at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else from the public want to comment? Okay, seeing none, I will bring it back to council for a motion to continue. Charlie.
Actually, you're not doing that tonight on this.
No, we're not. We're actually going to deal with this.
This is just a code determination on whether it's materially different. It is.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I know we're so good leading up to that. Now you just have to bang that one out.
All right.
So,
Can I make a
Your
motion?
Honor, real quick, I never received a copy of that correspondence that she mentioned.
Oh, well. Can I make a motion, Mr. Mayor? Time for public comment is closed.
Yeah, but this is the applicant, and usually we allow the applicant to respond to public comment as well. But if does anybody need a break before we launch back into this?
Sure.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor. That was why I raised my hand.
Okay, but would we want to take a break, or do we want to just power through this? I'm just looking for some consensus here. Power through.
It's a decision.
Okay, great. Charlie, you had a question. Go ahead, and then Steve.
Carl, I know this is one of these lawyer things, but what does substantial mean? And I know you don't want that question, but I'm struggling with this.
I actually do, because then I'm going to do the lawyerly thing. A substantial and material change to the application is what council determines is a substantial and material change to the application.
So it's impeachment.
Yeah, well, it's not exactly impeachment. I mean, it is in your mind, and based on what you have seen, is it materially and substantially different? And there's no framework in the code to really address that. The only other application that you have seen this on was the A&B bank building, but because that was technically, could have been a staff decision that got kicked up, it was the director's decision on whether it was materially different rather than yours. But because you are the decision-making body in the code for this, for a special use permit on a marijuana establishment, you have to make that determination on whether it's materially different, which is the whole reason we're here in front of you. 99 out of 100 applications you'd never see on this question.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Charlie? Great. Steve Davis.
Well, my comment is that in my mind, and that's all that really matters to me, is that there is a substantial change. The substantial change is that they are the sole occupant of that facility now, and they will be in complete control of that parking lot. So I think, that I'd like to see that come back through, and I'd make the motion to accept the substantial change, whatever you want to call this item on the agenda tonight.
I'd second the motion.
All right, been moved by Steve and seconded by Shelley. Further comments? Shelley.
Just a comment, Mr. Mayor. I know Tony was ahead of me. Did he want to comment first, or?
Sorry, I just clicked the next one down. I didn't know who
okay.
raised their hand first. So.
Okay. I was just going to comment also that I felt like there was similar to Steve's comments. For myself, voting for denial of the previous application was due to the parking concerns and the multiple tenants in the building and complaints of parking in the area. I think that there's enough of a change to this application with them being in charge of the whole building, having access through the stinker station and other issues, that to let it go back through the process and see if it comes out with a different project that might gain approval this time, or possibly not, but let's give it the process.
Thanks, Tony.
Oh, you unmuted me. Thank you. And I'm sorry, Shelley. Thank you for letting me go. I agree with Haley, and I guess I agree with Charlie, unless I don't agree with Charlie. He hit the nail on the head with his question. This is the same project, and I don't see a substantial change, so I'm not going to support Steve's motion. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'll make my comment, and I think we can count after my comment. But I look at this, and I think that literally every reason that we had to deny this the first time, it seemed like everybody kind of had a grab bag of different things. Some was parking, some was odor, some were the tenants, some was the commercial tenant who might be next door. I think that literally every single one of these things were addressed, which makes it significantly different. The parking was addressed, and then other things that we didn't ask for, letters of support from the current residential tenants. That sign looks janky. That's there right now. So having that be addressed, landscaping, all of those things, I think this, other than being in the exact same building and having a similar use, I don't know that really there's anything about this that's not significant from the first time. So I don't know if we'll end up approving it, but I do know if we take it to a vote, which if I don't see any more hands, I think we'll probably pass it through and allow these folks to give it another go at it at least. So unless Charlie, you have specific comments, call the question. Let's do a voice vote on this. Catherine.
Kat,
Yes.
Godus,
Yes.
Hershey,
You're muted, Hershey. Thumb
Muted.
up. There you go.
Can I change my vote if I was muted? No.
Davis,
Yes.
Willman,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you guys. Appreciate the presentation and the effort. And thank you, Ms. Carmer, for your public comment. All right, next item. Okay, we're up to number 16, planning file 6220. This is an appeal of a planning and zoning commission denial of a variance request related to 820 Bennett. This is I believe an ADU, right?
Jonathan, could we take a little break at some point though?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought we were taking it after that issue. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Shelley just wanted to power through. I just thought we're just going through the whole thing. Yeah,
No,
right.
I thought we'd get the break now.
I tell you what, we've done good. We are should be rewarded. It is 8:21. Let's reconvene in 9 minutes at 8:30. We will see everybody then.
That was a quick 8 minutes, Mr. Mayor.
You know, when you have good company and good times, things fly.
Yeah, when you're talking with good people. Thank you.
All right. It is 8:30 and looks like we have.
Is Steve back?
Yes. Yeah, we're all back. All right. Well, let's launch back into it. Hope everybody had a great dinner or whatever everybody's doing. Are we ready to go back to, this is item number 16. This is the 820 Bennett Avenue ADU, I believe. Who is presenting on this?
That would be me. So first off, could we promote the applicant, Kurt Caruth, from attendee to panelist?
Absolutely.
Okay. And so to start out, I just have a very brief presentation. Again, this is an appeal of the planning and zoning decision. Just a second. So planning file 6220 820 Bennett garage variance appeal. This was for a garage. So project location is 820 Bennett Avenue. It is a single family home on a 5. And so the history summary of the application, the variance application was reviewed by Planning and Zoning Commission at the August 25th meeting. Decision was made to continue the application to the September 22nd meeting. At the September 22nd meeting, the variance request to exceed the required rear yard lot coverage was denied. Planning and Zoning Commission in a 4-2 decision approved a motion to deny the variance request. And on September 26th, the applicant submitted a request to appeal the decision, which leads to the application for tonight. So this is just a section of code that was the variance requested. Accessory structures may be located in a required rear yard provided that the rear, not no more than 40% of the required rear yard is covered, and required rear yard is calculated by taking the width of a lot by the required setback for the zoning district, and it's measured from the rear lot line. So for this particular lot, it is 500 square feet. So again, for an appeal, staff doesn't make a formal recommendation. So I'll stop sharing my screen here. And then I just have a quick, I do have one very brief public comment. I don't know if should that be read into the record now or if that should be done later before I turn it over to the applicant.
If it's just one comment, we can probably read it now. That's fine.
Okay. Okay, it's very brief, so I'll just go ahead. So this was an email received on October 9th from David and Karen Samuelson, 511 9th Street, that just states, we have no problem whatsoever with the request for variance relief from required rear yard coverage by the Caruth family at 820 Bennett Avenue for construction of garage and storage space. So that's the one public comment I received. And so that was my presentation. So I guess I'll turn it over to the applicant for the appeal.
All right. Thanks, guys. Thanks for staying so late tonight. I was not aware these meetings lasted this long. So,
this is an early night, Kurt.
Yeah, is it really? Wow.
Yes.
All right. So kudos to you guys. All right. So Emery, just share the screen, hit the green button. And then click. Oh, can you guys see the plan?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So the kind of history on our project is we're if you guys are familiar with our lot, we're right next to the church building on the corner of 9th and Bennett, which they're great neighbors. They've been great neighbors, but it's just a thing that we lived here for 20 years, I guess, 20 years in our house. And it's just whenever like church is in session, and I think there's actually a couple churches that kind of share, and you'll have some Sundays where, it hasn't happened for a long time, obviously, but you'll have some Sundays where you literally cannot park on
on Bennett between 8th and 9th, and then from 9th up, like, yeah, you can't park. I mean, they're just so crowded. So we kind of started kicking around the idea of, I wonder if there's any way we could do a garage somewhere on the property. And so the plan kind of shows the generation of this idea. We've gone through a couple of design ideas, and kind of this, I think, is the best as far as location on the lot, and then allowing to, to keep a little bit of open space. Just real quickly, when we met on the 25th of August with P&Z, and we were continued, and P&Z asked us to shrink the storage room and also push the storage room and garage back 3 feet off of the property line, which we've done. And so we did that, and then we went back to P&Z on the 22nd, and then the lot coverage issue came up. And so I think, Emery, make sure I'm correct, I think we're 92 square feet over our allowed square footage. And it's kind of one of those things that I've got a 123 square foot shed, existing shed in the corner that's kind of below the trunk of the car, that building the garage and getting a car off the street is kind of the goal. But with that storage unit, I'm losing all my storage for lawnmower and, just yard stuff, coolers, and I've got a table saw and crap like that. And it's just that's kind of where I'm after, and why I even appealed, is just that I don't really have any storage. And so I'm just hoping that you guys that have houses downtown and lawnmowers and all that stuff can understand kind of our situation. We do have approval letters from both the north and south neighbors, our actual adjacent neighbors, and they're fine with the garage and the storage room as well. And so, and then we have a approval from across the street, and then this new one, which is kind of a surprise. I'm happy and surprised that somebody actually took the time to send an email and give us a thumbs up. So that's, yeah, the garage part has been approved, and just the storage area square footage coverage is not approved, or was not approved. And so that's really correct. I made all the changes that P&Z asked, and when we went back and went for the second level, it was kind of a little bit of a surprise, because after the first one, we really hadn't talked about the square footage coverage, and it was a little bit of a surprise that we were denied because it did not even come up. So that's it. Am I forgetting anything? I think that's it.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for staff or the applicant? Okay, we'll open this to public comment. Does anybody from the public have anything to say? Okay, we'll now close public comment. So Carl, can we act on this, or is this the next meeting?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember in the staff report if this is the next meeting. I think maybe Emery can tell us. Or Jen, since.
I think in the past that we have done the appeal in a single meeting.
Yeah.
To my recollection.
I think that's right. And I'm sorry, I'm having an issue with Civic Clerk and I can't get into the packet, so.
Okay, well, let's do it then. We'll bring it back to council for further questions, comments, and/or a motion. Councilor Davis.
Well, I think given the fact that, this is in the downtown core, these are small lots. There's actually a lot of setback issues kind of pre-existing all over the downtown core. And I personally have a lot of confidence in the applicant. I'm glad that it's somebody like Kurt, and being an architect, I know that he will do this project in a tasteful way. He has absolutely no comments in the packet from anybody asking us not to approve this, and there's a quite a number of letters in there supporting the project. So with that, I would make a motion that we approve the project as drawn.
Second.
And accept that.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Davis, second by Councilor Hershey. Further discussion. Charlie.
Yeah, I agree with everything Steve said, but my problem is the code requires, and I don't agree with this is really part of the recent revision, is you have to meet all the criteria for granting the variance. And it seems to me that they don't meet the criteria because, and I just hope you guys take this for, I'm not bad thing, but the applicants created the problem. They put a guest house on the property, they've done all these other things. That's created the coverage issue. I think it's wrong. I think that the variance rules ought to be changed. And if you meet most of the criteria, because what Steve Davis said about the downtown area and how small it is, I think they ought to be able to get this. But I don't think that I don't think they meet all the criteria, and you're supposed to meet all the criteria. It's one of those things that pains me, but I'm going to have to vote against the motion.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Shelley.
I guess my feeling on some of the criteria, and maybe I'm not interpreting it exactly correctly, but some of the criteria that's listed, you know, like whether or not you create the requirement for the variance, you know, is to me somewhat of a judgment call, because by nature, almost any project you go to build, you're creating the condition. So I think there are enough issues being solved here, as Steve said, with downtown and the very small lots. You know, none of these homes have garages unless they were added at a much later time. So there's a element here that's being solved by adding the garage. At the same time, the homeowner still has the need for storage. So I feel that there's enough of a need here, and I will support the variance request.
Okay. I have no comments on this. So Catherine, please call the question.
Hope,
Yes.
Hershey,
Sorry. Yes. Sorry.
Steve.
Yes. She
Go
cut
this-
out there.
Yeah, yes.
Willman,
No.
motion passes.
All right. Thank you, Cruz. Appreciate it. Congratulations.
Thanks, Kurt.
Make a pretty garage. Okay, up next is item number 17, RAPA, IGA, and bylaws. Who's?
April from REFRA is supposed to do it. I think she is held up right now. I hate to do this. Do you think we could go on to 18 and come back?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Hey,
We'll try to make the next one really long and drawn out. This is item number 18, Ordinance 23, Series of 2020. Ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, temporarily amending sections 120.030, 070B, and 8080B of the Municipal Code to allow consumption of alcoholic beverages in designated public areas within the General Improvement District. First reading. Jen.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. This is intended to kind of help the downtown area related to the coming winter. So this ordinance would allow for the city manager to designate areas within the GID, public areas within the GID for the consumption of alcoholic beverages in those designated places. It would require appropriate signage, and it's intended for us to hopefully be able to have some solution for tents and heaters in the underbridge area or nearby. We're still working through all of those details, but it's also temporarily amending this section of the code. And so if it doesn't work, it can be repealed, but we are really very concerned about our businesses, our restaurants, and just want to see if there are solutions that we can do. So this would allow for the to-go beverages and food, because to-go beverages cannot be sold without food, but they could be taken away. And if there's a warming tent, that it might allow for some additional capacity.
Thanks, Jen. Questions for staff? All right. Okay, Shelley.
Jen, is this specific to the GID? This is written specific to the GID, and I know we're looking at doing the under the bridge or the area, you know, the new kind of plaza area. But could it be done in an other area of town where there's a cluster of restaurants, say over by Meadows or some other area?
Absolutely. I think we were looking for kind of an area where it would apply rather than having it apply throughout the city, but it certainly could apply throughout the city. We just, we picked the GID because it was something that was defined and there was a map, and there are many restaurants there, but certainly that is, we would be happy to make that a different map.
Okay, and would that be something we would want to deal with now, or would that be an add-on later?
I think you could, I think that you could tell us if you want it to be the whole city, and then, you know, Deborah would have the ability to designate those public areas. So I think we were just looking to define it, and
okay, but we could.
It was a map that was easy, and it had kind of the general downtown area, but could certainly go for the whole town.
I hate to cut out other areas, say North Glenwood or Meadows, or other areas where there might be a few restaurants kind of clustered together that would want to have an area to do this.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely, Shelley. And it's just kind of your comfort level with how expansive delegating that authority. One of the concerns, the reason I wanted to do it this particular way, is that there was a clear delegation to the city manager to define those areas so that we could move more quickly.
Okay.
And so I think that part of it when we talked about using the GID is that people are comfortable with what that area is. You know, from my standpoint, it can be citywide, and that's fine. It really has more to do with your comfort level as council with that delegation.
you're talking to someone who grew up in New Orleans, where
I recognize this. So
open container laws. So I am comfortable, if anyone else is on council is, for, you know, opening it up to the whole city and allowing the city manager or staff to work on designated areas. So just my comment there. Let me see if I had another question. Is it also still legal? Is there still that exemption that restaurants throughout the state can do, and in the city can do alcohol with takeout? Has that been extended, as far as we know, as long as this pandemic is going on?
I don't know. I'm not certain if it's the executive order that is actually governing now, or the legislature did act on this. So I would have to circle back to kind of where we are with that. But yes, I mean that the to-go beverages are still allowed.
I believe it was a legislative act.
Any other questions, Shelley? Steve, then Charlie.
I'm probably out of order, I guess. Are you going to?
These are just questions. These are just questions.
Probably comment and then bring it back around. So I'll raise my hand at that time. Thank you.
It is a public hearing, which requires public comment. Charlie, Questions?
Not a
Just
question.
comments. Okay.
Yep.
We'll open it to public comment. Seeing none, Steve Davis.
Well, and I thought maybe we were just giving direction, which really wouldn't, fall into the same organization of a lot of things we do. But I'm absolutely in favor of that citywide. I've actually traveled quite a bit in the last few months, trying not to stay closer to home. And I see this about everywhere I go. And what I would hope is that we wouldn't make it overly restrictive, as it seems like we've tended to do in trying to bring alcohol out of establishments. I'm reminded of I guess it was New Year's Eve party down under the bridge. And if you were going to drink, you had to stand behind a 6-foot chain link fence, which is absolutely ridiculous. So, I don't want to go any further in restricting that movement than the state would require.
Okay. Charlie, go ahead.
I agree with Steve and Shelley both on that. So with that, I would move to approve ordinance number 23, series of 2020, an ordinance of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, temporarily amending section 120.030.070B and 120.030.080B municipal code to allow consumption of alcohol beverages in designated public areas within the City of Glenwood Springs.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Deborah, you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
I was just going to reassure you, Steve, that I think it is our intention, other than following COVID restrictions, is that we intend to make this as easy as possible. And that's I think one of the reasons we want it to be temporary, just in case it has unintended consequences that we can quickly nip in the bud.
300%, Deborah.
Great. Thanks, Deborah.
Okay. Shelley, did you want to say something about this before we call the question?
No, I'm in complete agreement with the motion.
Of course you are. All right. Let's just make this easy, I guess. All in favor, signify by saying aye or raising their hand.
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 5-0. All right. Thank you very much. All right. Is Miss Long back available to? Yes. April, I'm going to promote you to a panelist. We're on REPWA.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay, great. And Mayor, would I have the opportunity to also share my screen?
You bet.
Okay. Let's see if I can do this. And are you seeing a PowerPoint with notes or without?
With notes.
Okay. Let's see if we can get it to the regular slide. How does that look now?
Oh, much better.
All right. Let me see if I can get myself set up here. Okay, thank you everybody for having me. I'm sorry I wasn't here when you got to my item on the agenda, but I appreciate you being patient with me. I'm April Long. I'm the Executive Director for the Rudai Water and Power Authority. You'll hear me refer to that as RWAPA, or I think older people who are more familiar with it have called it RWAPA in the past. We are a little bit of a misnomer. We have no water, no power, and no authority. And we're not strictly related to Rudai Reservoir, but
but we were born from those ideas. I wanted to talk to you tonight just to provide you with a little bit of an update about what we have been doing over the last couple of years since I became the executive director, and then to go over our intergovernmental authority that we have, an intergovernmental agreement that we have with Glenwood Springs, and to have offer you time to ask questions about that and anything about what we do on a regular basis, what we've been doing for the last few years, and what we have planned. So I say we're formed from these ideas. Let's move forward. RWAPA mobilizes resources and influence to benefit the waters and the communities of the Roaring Fork watershed. So the organization, in case you're not familiar with it, or if any of your public that's watching is not familiar with it, is a governmental organization. We have a representative from every jurisdiction in the watershed on the board. And so that includes Aspen, Basalt, Carbondale, Glenwood Springs, Pitkin County, and Eagle County that serve on our board. Garfield County also used to serve on our board, but has more recently decided not to. We represent the entire watershed on water issues. And so we're the kind of the eyes and the ears and the voice for the water resources of the watershed. So again, I say it's not strictly related to Rudai Reservoir, though we have that in our name, and that a significant portion of our work is about Rudai Reservoir, but we are looking out for the water resources of the entire watershed. The representative from Glenwood Springs was Rick Voorhees. And so I understand that he is no longer a councilman with you all, and we'll be looking for a replacement. So if anything that I say is interesting to you tonight, please consider joining the board. So recognizing that, like so many of our resources, water does not stop at jurisdictional boundaries. This organization was formed to kind of better serve all of our jurisdictions and to meet the needs of the watershed by looking at water as a shared resource. And therefore we need to share our abilities to protect it and our abilities to use it. So we work on programs and projects that promote water within the watershed. Again, we've been around for 40 years. The previous director was Mark Fuller, and Mark held that position for, I think, 38 years before I took over the title 2 years ago. I'm a part-time employee or part-time contractor to the Roaring Fork, to RWAPA. And I just serve it for 10 hours a week, and I'm the only employee to the organization. So our activities are different than other watershed groups that you might have been familiar with in the Roaring Fork area. So particularly, we are sometimes compared to the Roaring Fork Conservancy or to the Pitkin County Healthy Rivers and Streams Board. We're different in that the board that makes up our organization is governmental. And so we focus more on policy and planning. We do advocacy where Roaring Fork Conservancy does not typically. And I work on representing our local governments on the local, regional, state, and federal level. So we're looking at the water resources, like things like how the Clean Water Act or changes to the Clean Water Act might affect our watershed. We also foster implementation of the Roaring Fork Watershed Plan. This is a plan that was signed on to by all of the participating stakeholders in 2012. There are 250 action items within this plan that the entire kind of a collaboration of all of these stakeholders decided was important for protecting our watershed and promoting our watershed. And so the Rudai Water and Power Authority is the organization that's been, that is responsible for shepherding the implementation of that plan. We're also looking at the regional water efficiency plan, similar to the watershed plan. The water efficiency plan is looking at how different municipalities within the watershed can work on conserving water. We also work with the counties on what their role is in water conservation and water efficiency. I work to represent the watershed in the Basin Implementation Plan and in the state's Colorado Water Plan. And another big component of our activities include the ANS inspections at Rudai Reservoir. So these are the aquatic nuisance species inspections. That's our boat inspection program where we're trying to prevent mussels from entering Rudai Reservoir. And I'll update you a little bit more on that in just a second. Let's talk about that right now. I don't know if you're familiar with this program that we have, or if you're a boater at Rudai Reservoir, but It's under increased threat, as all reservoirs in the state, from being infested with mussels. And you can see some of these pictures. These are quagga mussels or zebra mussels that we're talking about. They're an invasive species that can be pretty detrimental or extremely detrimental to a water body. Colorado does not have any of these in our water bodies. And so we run a very rigorous inspection program through Colorado Parks and Wildlife to prevent those from coming into Colorado. Once they enter a water body, they're basically impossible to get rid of. They attach to infrastructure, as you can see in this picture here. And so it's critical at Rudeye Reservoir, at all reservoirs in Colorado, where if those reservoirs were to be infested with mussels, it would make it difficult to operate anything downstream of the reservoir. It would make it difficult to operate the outlet works. At Rudeye Reservoir, we have a hydropower facility just downstream in the city of Aspen's. A significant portion of the city of Aspen's energy portfolio is generated by this hydropower facility. And an infestation with mussels would make it impossible to run that. They also are filtering organisms. And so they eat all of the macroinvertebrates in a water body that would ruin the fishery and the recreation opportunities and the water quality of Rudeye Reservoir. So it's a very important program. In most parts of the state, this program is sponsored by CPW. Rudeye is a little bit different because there are so many organizations that are affected at Rudeye Reservoir. So the sponsorship falls on RWAPA and on our local jurisdictions. We also receive funding from the Colorado River District and from Ute Water Conservancy District, which holds significant amounts of contract water within Rudeye. So they're interested in the health of the Rudeye Reservoir and the infrastructure downstream of it. So they're a contributor to our program as well. And we work in partnership with the Forest Service, CPW, the Bureau of Reclamation, to operate this program. The threat of the mussels is coming from mostly to Rudeye Reservoir is coming mostly from Lake Powell. Lake Powell is infested with mussels and has been since 2008. And Utah cannot run a rigorous enough program to stop the spread of those invasive species to other states. And so this year we intercepted 18 boats carrying mussels from Lake Powell. All of those boats were from Lake Powell. And this is an increasing threat to Colorado and to Rudeye Reservoir particularly. In 2019, we only intercepted 6 boats, and in 2018, we only intercepted 2, and we had never intercepted any in the years prior to that. So part of that is due to us expanding this program to be able to inspect all of the boats and to operate at longer hours, our inspection program, to run our inspection program for more hours and more days. But it's also because the threat is growing at Lake Powell. This population is growing at Lake Powell. And this year we saw more recreationalists, like every recreation industry, I think in the state, like biking and rafting. We saw an increase in boating traffic at Rudeye Reservoir too. And so Glenwood Springs contributes to this program. Thank you very much for that, but you can see it's a much needed program. I mentioned some of our partners. I'm not going to go through those right now. I'm going to keep going because I know you have a very full schedule tonight. I've also talked about these plans. We work with other organizations in the watershed that are working on stream management plans. These are plans to look at how we better use water to meet all of our water needs in the valley. So there's been stream management plans on the Crystal River and on the Upper Roaring Fork, and RWAPA is a partner in the development of those plans as well as in implementing projects that are a result of those plans. We also in the last year or two have worked with the Roaring Fork Conservancy to develop a tool so that we can kind of bring more involvement and interaction with the information that we have about our watershed with any user group that might be interested in it. I am happy to come back with the Roaring Fork Conservancy to explain this tool and how it could be useful to Glenwood Springs. But it's an interactive data visualization tool. You can go to one website and begin to dig deeper and deeper and deeper, depending on what kind of information you're looking for. So if you're looking for where are the diversions, where's water diverted out of the rivers in the Roaring Fork watershed, and who owns those rights, and how old are those rights and how much do they own? You could kind of dig deep into that, or you could dig deep into water quality metrics. So where has water quality been tested in the watershed? What are we finding out about that water quality? So there's lots of different kind of ways that you can get into some very interesting data. If you wanted to see where have we done riparian restoration projects and where are there gaps in where riparian restoration is needed. We're trying to put that all into one picture so that a user could really find a lot of information at one site. I mentioned the water efficiency plans. I'm very interested. I know you had a topic on your agenda tonight to talk about water rates and your municipal water structure. So I will be working with Glenwood Springs on that information to see how RWAPA can be of assistance in moving that project forward as well. I kind of wanted to give you a brief snapshot of our financial status. Our fund balance is about $115,000. We have a regular operating budget of about $56,000, which pays for my work with the organization and some smaller projects. The ANS program, this is again that mussel inspection program at Rudeye Reservoir, costs us annually about $115,000. I expect that to increase. We did twice as many inspections this year as we've done in any year in the past, and had several of our staff working overtime into really late hours of the night. So I'm expecting those costs to increase in years coming. And this is a snapshot of Glenwood Springs contributions annually to that program. We're not asking for an increase in those contributions in 2021, but maybe looking for an increase in future years, depending on how the ANS program works. So looking forward at 2020 and 2021, looking into 2021 now, we're trying to increase our community presence. We're also looking at what kind of flexibility exists within the water that's contracted at Rudeye Reservoir. We have found in 2018 and in 2020, which were both really dry years, that we were kind of scrambling in the Roaring Fork watershed to pull together partners to meet the needs of our communities during times of drought. And I know that Glenwood Springs felt that really strongly this year. But one of the things that we've done, for example, that I'm talking about in this contract flexibility is that in the lower Roaring Fork, we have some temperature issues that are exacerbated in years of drought and really warm temperatures, low water years where we don't have very much water flowing through that river. We have to put voluntary fishing closures, which affects our fishing recreationalists, affects the economies, especially the economies of Basalt and Glenwood Springs and Carbondale that rely on tourism from the fishing industry. So if we have to put those fishing restrictions on, and it also impacts the quality of the Roaring Fork River, and so it could impact it for years to come when we see these really low flows. And so we're working with partners who contract water in Rudeye Reservoir, partners like the Colorado River District, but also all of our participating entities like Glenwood Springs and Carbondale, who own little slivers of water, to see what kind of flexibility we have in releasing that water so that we can improve those flows, which lowers the temperatures and allows the fishing to continue, but also improves the quality of the water and the habitat in the lower Roaring Fork. That's just an example of some of the advocacy work and the research that I'm doing for RWAPA. And we're going to improve the communication that we have as I'm acting as a liaison between all of these organizations. So hoping to come before you more frequently so you can better understand and we can be of better service to Glenwood Springs. So that was very quick. I'm open to questions and ideas. One other thing I wanted to cover is that we have this intergovernmental agreement that was last updated in early 2000s. I think 2002 might have been the signing date. We have updated that because there was a glitch in the name, which was causing some problems with our reporting with the state. We had, for some reason in the intergovernmental agreement, been referred to as the Rudeye Reservoir Water and Power Authority. And so in cleaning up that name, we also just kind of cleaned up we made some edits within there and better clarified what the scope of what RWAPA was covering. And those, the updated IGA has been reviewed by Glenwood Springs staff, as well as your staff attorney or your contract attorney, who I believe is here to answer questions if you have any. So I'm happy to turn it over to questions now.
All right. April, do you mind not sharing your screen just so we can see the folks up a little bigger?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Questions for April? That was a fantastic presentation. Councilor Hershey.
No, I just wanted to thank April for a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. I went really fast, so I'm happy to get into anything else.
At 9 o'clock, fast is how we like it.
Okay, good.
Shelley.
Thank you, April. And I just had a question maybe for you, but also kind of for for Carl, our attorney. Are there, I read through the IGA and the ordinance or resolution that we had adopting the new one, but just wondering, are there any, it didn't seem to me like there were any substantial changes to the agreement. Is there anything there that we should be aware of as far as?
No, it's functionally what we've been dealing with, from whenever, 30 years ago. So.
Okay, great. All right, thanks.
Does this require public comment? No. Any comments? I guess I'll have comments. I think we've all seen how watershed protection is, we all knew is important. We all knew our water security was important, but we didn't know until we went through Grizzly Creek fire. And, thankfully, somebody said you can't swing a dead cat in this town without hitting a water engineer. So we have a lot of resources, a lot of people helping us out. And I just want to thank you, April and RWAPA, for being a part of that robust safety net for us. So I appreciate it. I think we should definitely update our 2002 IGA. I think that we should continue to be active supporter with RWAPA. And what else do we need? Any other decision points we need, or now's the time to ask, April? It's a really good time.
No, the only thing I'm looking for is the signature on the IGA. And then, as I said earlier, I'm recruiting one of you to fill Rick's seat. So I'd be happy to talk with any of you if you have more interest in more of what RWAPA does. But it is a really, it's a great board. So I would appreciate anybody's service. And then just back to your points, Mayor, I will be meeting with some of your staff soon to see how RWAPA can be of service in this kind of critical time that Glenwood Springs is facing. I know that this has been a very rough summer for you, and we want to be helpful in whatever RWAPA can provide.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Shelley and then Steve.
April, when do you meet?
Sorry, I should have said that. We meet quarterly. Our next meeting will be, I think it's November 13th. It's a Thursday. And that's our last meeting of the year.
Okay. And I know I was the alternate to Rick, but he must have had stellar attendance because he never called on me to cover for him. And with my busy schedule, I did not get to attend one of your meetings. So.
Well, we would love to have you if you want to see what it's about. I can invite you to the November meeting.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
And thanks for your presentation. And with that, I will make a motion that we approve the IGA and new bylaws for the RWAPA and between RWAPA and the city.
Second. It's been moved by Shelley, seconded by myself, Steve Davis.
Oh, I just thought it would be an appropriate time tonight to nominate Paula to take Rick's spot for that.
Okay.
Taking it Paula's absent.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I think we can do this in short order. All those in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None noted. Motion carries 5-0. April, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for
Thank
hanging
you
out
all.
and working through the technical difficulties.
No, that's no problem. And thanks, Carl and Anna, for your help on the IGA. I appreciate it.
All right. Next item is temporary signs, item 19. Extending the temporary suspension of portions of municipal code relating to temporary signs.
That's
Feels
pretty
like a
much
gem. Is that it? Okay.
It's the same as 2020-24, resolution 2020-24, suspending those portions of the sign code to be a little bit more flexible during COVID. The difference with this is resolution 24 expires at the end of October. This one has no expiration until you all as council decide to repeal it or reinstate the regulations. There's a lot of back and forth on what the right date was or whether you should do it again. My sense of it is that we're looking at similar conditions to what we have today going on into 2021 fairly significantly. So it just seemed like a good idea to extend it indefinitely for now.
Steve, you have your hand up?
You want a motion? You're going to take comment.
Throw a motion out there.
Yeah, I would make a motion to extend indefinitely.
Second.
It's been moved by Steve, seconded by Tony. Further comments? The only comment I would, I'm sorry.
The official motion is to approve the resolution. Is that what you meant, Steve? To approve the resolution?
Yeah, whatever.
No more of the comment.
I want a second whatever.
My only serious comment would be, we do have a municipal election coming up, and the suspending the municipal code for signs, we cannot discriminate on the content of speech is my understanding. So just understand we could have some very, very large campaign signs. Carl.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say we're in the middle of an election cycle now, and I have a lot of confidence in the people of Glenwood Springs around this particular issue. So we haven't seen any real problems currently. I don't anticipate us seeing any real problems in the future, Mr. Godis.
You have a lot more faith than I do. All right. Then motion moved, seconded. Any other further comments? Any public comments? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Raising your hand. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. Up next, item number 20. Oh, where did my stuff now? So I asked these two things we put on. Typically, we have during election season items that sometimes are pertain to Glenwood Springs directly. Sometimes they have pertained to Glenwood Springs tangentially. But there's two items on the statewide ballot that I thought we should at least consider supporting as a board, because they do impact us in some way. And I'm open if somebody else wants to. I think I might have put this out there to Shelley, but maybe not the rest of you. But if there's specific ones that you think we in Glenwood Springs should take a stance on, then well, I don't know what we do, because they're not on the agenda and the next meeting's after the election, so never mind. These are the only two. And if we don't want to consider them, that's fine. Charlie, go ahead.
Yeah, just one comment, just so the council's aware. The Colorado Municipal League Board of Directors has opposed the Proposition EE, and the reason they have is they feel that it might, if it's approved, take away the authority of local municipalities to have those taxes or to increase those taxes or change those. So they feel it's a local versus statewide issue that could become adverse to municipalities. So I'm putting it out for what it's worth. I understand why you want it, Mr. Mayor, but I think we ought to keep in mind that it could have an adverse impact, and that's what the people at the statewide level have thought about with respect to that proposition.
Carl, do you have any insight on would we be grandfathered in, or how does that, would they supersede us?
Yeah, as I understand it, we would be fine. And I understand CML's concern about the local versus statewide issue. There is a fair amount of variability on local taxes that were adopted. Obviously, someplace like Summit County, the entire county adopted and is sharing in a tax. Garfield County is much more of a hodgepodge. So I can see it going either way, frankly.
Okay.
My comment would be is, Carl, and maybe it's a question where the comment is, could they prohibit us from increasing the tax if they passed some other tax, if we chose to increase the tax?
Yeah, that would be a possibility, I guess, under EE. I think it would be a question of how it gets interpreted.
Okay. I just selected EE because we had, as a council and a community, had gone through this and had weighed in on it. And I had also said that, Gallagher also is on our local ballot, and I didn't know if we wanted to take it. So let's take the Gallagher. It's a statewide approval, the Gallagher repeal. I guess I'll just open it up real quick. Do people have strong opinions on a statewide Gallagher, or if we even want to take a vote on whether we should support it or not? Councilor Hershey.
I think first of all, I've already voted, so you guys aren't going to convince me anyway. But, and a lot of people have already voted. But, I think Gallagher amendment B may pass, but I don't support it. Thank you. The repeal of it.
And I guess my question is more, do we as a board, I got some weird echo.
I don't know that it's appropriate for us to tell people how to vote. That's up to you guys.
So I'm going to mute some folks here. And we have just taken those votes before, a vote of support from this council. So we're not, I think it's just saying, here's what we think we support as a community. So that's all it is. I don't view it as we're telling people how to vote. So, and if we don't want to take up these things and put forth anything, I'm fine with that too. I'm not going to die on my sword for this. Go ahead, Shelley. You're muted, Shelley.
I am. There's that mute button. I agree with you, Jonathan, that I think it's worthwhile for the city to take a stand on this because it does affect our fire department, fire district. It affects other, some of the entities in the town like CMC and library have already voted themselves, their districts out of it. But it has a large effect on funding. So I think to see a statewide reversal of the Gallagher Amendment would be, it's beneficial to the city. So I think it is worthwhile for us to take a stand on it.
Is there a third person that would like to weigh in of whether we should take a stand or not? Charlie? Okay. So we have enough people that we want to take a vote on it. So if everybody's familiar, I'm just going to presumptively assume everybody's familiar with this ballot initiative. So does anybody have any? Oh, Charlie, you have your hand up. I'm sorry. No? Okay. So if anybody has a comment on it in support or not, Shelley, go ahead. You're muted still.
Here we go again. Do you need a motion?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so I would move that we approve resolution 34-2020 or 2020-34.
34.
Was that the right one? No?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, 2020-34.
Correct.
Yeah. To, let's see what the wording, advocating voter approval of the Gallagher Amendment repeal and property tax assessment rates measure, or otherwise known as Amendment B.
Okay. I will second that. I guess, yeah, Captain, let's take roll on this. Wheelman?
If that was Willman, it's a yes.
Coe,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Hershey,
No.
Godus,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, let's just roll up to the next one. This is the tobacco tax. Charlie, I think your comment is insightful and well timed, but I will make a motion that we, given that, still support that amendment. And so I move that we support resolution 2020-35, a resolution advocating for voter approval of the tobacco and e-cigarette tax increase for health and education programs, measure Proposition EE during the November elections.
Second.
Been moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Davis. Further conversation, Charlie.
My comment stays kind of the same, but we're not just because we have it, other municipalities may not. They may want to adopt it. I understand the principle behind it. I just can't support this. I don't think we can dictate to other municipalities. And I thought the logic that I heard of the CML board meeting made a lot of sense. So I'm going to oppose it, even though in principle, I support the concept.
I appreciate it. I think what I would say is this is not dictating to anybody. It's just showing as a community where we support and what our values are. I don't think that anybody's going to actually look at this and start door knocking because the Glenwood Springs City Council took this. I would say though, I think it is important because the county has not taken this up, and we do have these dark zones like Catherine Store and Thunder River Market that are in unincorporated Garfield County that, while the municipalities have done different things, people are going to these places to get cheap cigarettes and vape products, which really undercuts what we're trying to do in Glenwood, Carbondale, and throughout the valley. And it really creates a disjointed enforcement and everything else. So while this doesn't go as far as anybody, I think the tax is only like $2.50 or something like that. It doesn't go quite to the $4 that we're at. The vape tax, I think, is actually more than ours. So there's not that total consistency, but it gets the entire valley to a more even playing field because the county has decided not to act to protect the kids and the residents in the unincorporated parts of the county. So that's why I'm going to be supporting it. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I motioned, I believe, and Steve seconded. So Catherine, let's call the question.
Hershey,
No.
Davis,
Yes.
Godus,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Willman,
No.
motion passes.
All right. Man, we are so far ahead. Anybody want to take like a little break here?
Break.
All right.
10 minutes. I'd love to take a break.
All right. The only thing we have is a report from city administration, city manager.
Okay. And Jen, jump in if I get anything wrong. I'm happy to let you guys know we're purchasing 52 propane heaters with CDOT dollars. We've already handed out 30 of them to businesses throughout the city in the nick of time before it got too cold. I want to make sure I wanted to thank Matt Nunez for really figuring out the CDOT program and buying all the heaters. Dan Roper, our park superintendent, for helping to get them out and to let you guys know that on the 27th of October is when we're going to come back and kind of ask your permission for the other ideas that we're seeking to kind of help restaurants throughout the city, because we are really concerned. I think it was a survey that 60% of restaurants throughout the country think that unless things get better, they may shut down. So we're doing everything we can. Jen's been beating her head up against the wall trying to figure out solutions, and we're hoping to bring you back some of those solutions.
Thanks, Deborah. And how do businesses get the heaters, or how are they distributed?
I believe Matt went out and asked them.
Okay. Okay.
I saw something on Roy Fork Swap where Chrissy Clary from the Colorado Ranch House was looking desperately to buy several of them, but just could not source them because I think everybody else in the country's looking at a similar thing. So I don't know if she is aware that we have some available, and if not, maybe we want to put a tickler in Matt Nunez's ear to maybe reach out to her.
We definitely have. I don't know how many of each restaurant is getting. We're also trying to help some nonprofits as well. But we're looking to see if we can source some more heaters, although now there's starting to be caps on how many you can buy.
Yeah, makes sense. And I guess I would say, Deborah, did you say October 27th, you're going to bring something back before us?
Yes, when you have a special meeting to select your council person was when we were going to ask you about solutions that hopefully we have solved with, tenting and the to-go alcohol in places. And I think it's something we just have to, kind of like the outdoor dining in the summer, but even more difficult. We have to be nimble and creative and try and see what works and what does not.
I guess my only suggestion, not that you're asking, but would be, that's 2 weeks away, and don't wait on us to try to make decisions. If you need to run at this and you need to do some things, I think this would be one of those times where you could probably get out a little ahead of your council if you're trying to make things easier for the businesses. Am I alone in that? Okay, never mind. I guess wait.
We need a little more time to figure out, because the tenting solutions are really, and we'll take you through some of the difficulties, they are really hard.
Okay.
Deborah,
all right.
Gas or electric?
I think the ones we handed out were propane, right, Jen? But we're looking at electric if we can for under the bridge for reasons to ensure safety.
I like electric because that helps our electric department. All right. Anything else, Deborah? Carl?
Just real quickly, I mentioned at the last meeting that RMI had requested a meeting. That meeting took place. You should have gotten a privileged and confidential memo on it. I'm not going to talk about what happened at the meeting, obviously, but I just wanted to alert you that that was in your inbox.
So what happened at the meeting? I'm just joking. I'm just kidding.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? All right. Meeting is adjourned. Sorry. Do we need a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Seconded by Charlie. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.